Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody enjoyed a long, relaxing weekend, enjoyed their Memorial Day, got to celebrate it with their friends, family, loved ones, and then remembering the people who served on Memorial Day. It was a really fun and relaxing weekend for us. Brian, I know it was a pretty eventful weekend for you too, my friend.
Yeah, it's good, but I'm happy to be back. And yesterday was always an interesting day for me because of, and I put a tweet out, Trev, that Memorial Day a lot of times for us as a growing up, it was about we did a family reunion my whole life, and then a lot of people think it's like it's a great day to recognize those who serve, and I'm like, it's actually way deeper than that because it's a day where we actually honor those who have fallen. And I'm always reminded of, there's a meme, not a meme, but a video from a couple years ago that they played this year as well, of this 90-something-year-old guy that before he passed away, or, obviously before he passes away, not that he has, flying him back to the, Utah beach, you know what I mean, for D-Day, and thinking of all the what this day means. And as I tweeted yesterday, for us, it's a barbecue. It's a fun day off. It's, it's like a pre-4th of July, we have fireworks and all this stuff. But for those who served, for a lot of them, it's a day where they remember their comrades that have fallen, their brothers and sisters that didn't make it home. And, it adds a little something to the day. And it's just another day where you just are reminded of what makes that group of people so different. So, and why I hold them in such high regard, because they all sign up knowing that's a potential outcome, and that's why some people like me don't sign up, because they don't have it in them. You know what I mean? So like Veterans Day, we celebrate all of them, but Memorial Day means something different. It's not a day where my grandfather ever really accepted any recognition on Memorial Day, because for him, this wasn't a day for me. This is a day for my brothers who never made it home. And they're a special breed. They're why you and I can sit here on a day like this and enjoy this freedom that we have and be able to talk football. And so to all of you, we appreciate you, we salute you, and we thank you. And we remember your brothers and sisters that gave their lives for us and for you. Because if you talk to any soldier, they say it's really about that man next to you. When you're in that foxhole, that's what it's about. When you're on that battlefield, that's what it's about. It's not so much about this grand idea of why you joined. It's about the mission and knowing that you're fighting for that man next to you. And so we honor all of you and thank all of you, and hope you guys had a great day yesterday. And now I'm here with Trev, ready to rock and roll and talk some Notre Dame football, and yeah, we appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Very much so. And today, Brian, what we have on the docket, we got a buy, sell, hold to kick off this week, as you guys can see here on the screen. Now, if this does happen to be your first buy, sell, hold, this is something that we do for our premium message board members at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Premise: your submission will generate a lot of conversation with Brian and I. It can be about Notre Dame, college football. It is the off season, so I have a feeling that we're going to get some off topic, maybe some wrestling questions, maybe some food questions somewhere in there. So it'll be good. It'll be really good.
Well, and there's a couple at the beginning that are repeats from last week that I want to get to, because they were ones I was looking forward to all of them, but those ones especially I wanted to answer from those folks. So we will start off with our guy Salty, Trev, as we ramp this thing up. But we'll get to those other ones here very soon.
From Salty, buy, sell, hold. Some project that Notre Dame, a private institution, so only a projection, is spending $40 million on NIL, six amongst the top programs. Texas is number one at $47 million. Notre Dame's recruiting class, however, is above number 6 and likely to rise higher within the next month. Mike Martin, with his collegiate and NFL experience, has been critical and largely unheralded individual driving this success as general manager.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it from the standpoint of I do think he's a critical part of this. I don't know that I'd say he's unheralded per se. I think he's gotten the credit for it, but I mean, he's kind of doing his job. I think a lot of the success that they're having in recruiting is due in large part to the job the coaches are doing in getting these kids interested in his job is to say, okay, now you bring it home. You make sure that financially we can make this package work. And I think he's done a very good job of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to try to take it away from him. I think he's a very important part of this. But I don't know that he's necessarily driving the who we're recruiting part as much as maybe other GMs. And I don't know that that's what Marcus Freeman hired him to do. So I'm not even being critical of it. I just think, obviously, I don't know that Notre Dame is here if their GM's not doing the job that he's doing. But I also know they're not here if not for Marcus Freeman and the assistant coaches. And that's the whole point. And, guys like Carter Allman and Jordan Blake and Myron Tagovailoa-Amosa and DJ Prine and Kenny Sanders and, and Becca Seitz. I mean, there's so many of these people that are a part of this recruiting operation that it's not just one. And it's all of them together that kind of combine this. So my pushback is more of Mike Martin's doing his job and doing it well. That's what you're paid to do. But it's also the entire recruiting staff. It's the assistant coaches. It's Marcus Freeman. It's the I think it's Becca Seitz, right? Isn't that the one who's like the one that in charge of like just really organizing all the visits, which are hugely successful for Notre Dame. So there's just a lot that goes into it. And you want to be able to make sure that you understand it's the whole operation together that's driving a lot of this, and why Notre Dame is where they is, where they is. It's like the old Popeye. I am what I am. I is what I is. Yes, that's why they are where they are, and it's a good operation. It's been successful so far.
Yeah, we share the same sentiment. I buy that his job has been a crucial facet to their success, but I get held up around the word unheralded. So it'd be unheralded if Notre Dame was like first overall and they'd already won a national championship, but there's a ways to go. But yeah, I'm with you. Mike Martin's doing his job. I love the hire at the time to bring in somebody with NFL experience, because the fact of the matter is that this day and age of college football is closer to the professionals than what it was 25 years ago in college football. So it's where you're at, and you needed to bring in somebody like Mike Martin who had that experience. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I don't want this to sound, and I do as I'm saying it. I'm like, well, this really sounds like you're trying to take credit away from Mike Martin. I'm really not. I'm just saying, like, I think this makes it seem like Mike Martin's like the Notre Dame version of James Blanchard or Chad Bowden, and I don't think that he is. But I don't think that's what his job is. And so I just want to be clear on that. I'm not trying to take away credit, because I'm just saying, like, the way the operation is set up is everybody's supposed to do their job at a high level. I think when it comes to high school recruiting, Mike Martin's doing a really good job. I think the transfer portal needs a little bit of work. But from high school recruiting, he's doing an excellent job for what he's being tasked with doing. Just like Carter Allman's not being asked to do Mike Denbrock's job, who's not being asked to do DJ, Bryant's job, who's not being asked to do Becca Seitz's job, who's not being, they all play a very important role. And that was really the attempt, is to just make sure that we understand that there's a lot of people that get credit for this, but it did come across, in my opinion, as I'm saying it, and I saw one person in the chat kind of say it comes across very much as a downplaying of the job Mike Martin's doing. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to kind of bring everybody up as opposed to tear him down. So you're not where you are now if Mike Martin's not doing his job. I'm simply saying you're also not here if a lot of other people aren't doing their job. And that's more of what it's about for me. So they're all doing a good job, which is why you're going to have yet another big time class.
From Shard, buy, sell, hold. Excuse me, buy one, sell one, hold one. Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, or the Ultimate Warrior?
Okay. So this is one from last week that I was like, I've got to answer this. I was so looking forward to answering this before the power went out. But there's two ways of looking at this. And in both such scenarios, I'm selling Ultimate Warrior. I still can't believe that the WWF at the time, they were the WWF, now they're WWE, tried to push Ultimate Warrior on us as some sort of a Hulk Hogan replacement, because he was terrible. Just the character was great, but the guy playing the character was terrible. He was super stiff. He had no moves. His promos were terrible. He had like no ring presence other than I'm big, I'm roided up, and I go crazy. And before the match even starts, I'm gassed because I sprint down and I'm shaking the ropes and all. He was terrible. And then WCW did the same thing with him. They brought him into WCW and like, oh, Hogan's all scared of him. I'm like, this guy's terrible. But anyway, as far as like my favorite, like growing up, my favorite, it's Hulk Hogan. It was my favorite as a kid. Like he was wrestling when I was a child. You know, he is the guy that made it just the famous entity that it was. You can say, oh, Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon did a great job of orchestrating a lot of things, but it doesn't go anywhere if you don't have Hulk Hogan as your lead. That's just a fact. Whether you like him or don't like him, or as the character or the person or whatever. I mean, to me, Terry Bollea and Hulk Hogan are not the same person, you know, because you're looking at it's the character that I loved. I don't care about his personal life. I mean, there's some good, there's some bad. It's more of just like the character was what I loved as a kid. You know, I still remember the feeling I had when he body slammed Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. Like that was an amazing thing. He was WWF for me as a kid. He was wrestling as a kid for me. And then, you know, Randy Savage was also great because I think it was that same WrestleMania 3 that I think he was in what I still believe is one of the greatest matches ever, which was like this 20-minute battle with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, which was just absolutely phenomenal. So if you're just talking about like my favorite, my fandom, and I also was always someone who was drawn to the baby faces. Like I've never been a big fan of like bad guys. Like I never owned a single Decepticon toy as a kid. I never owned Skeletor. You know what I mean? Like I was always like, I want He-Man. I want the G.I. Joes. I never bought a Cobra, you know, member as a kid. I only had the G.I. Joes. It's just always been kind of my personality, but and Macho was kind of always back and forth between heel and babyface. And, you know, and then when he broke up the Mega Powers, you know, because his insecurity with Miss Elizabeth and Hulk and all this, it's just like, he was a different character, but so that's my view of like fandom. Now, if you talk about the quality of the wrestlers, it's so, you know, as a fan, buy Hulk, hold Macho, sell Ultimate Warrior. Because I loved when Macho was a babyface. But he also was a really good heel. Looking back on it as an adult now, you're like, he was a really good heel. But if you're talking about quality of wrestlers, this is as easy as it gets. It's buy Macho and it's hold Hogan and sell Ultimate Warrior. Hogan was a great showman. He wasn't necessarily a phenomenal wrestler. Macho was a great wrestler that also was a great showman. So if you're just talking about the you know, buy one, sell one, hold one is the quality of them as actual performers, you can debate, you know, who was a better showman, Macho or Hulk. But when it comes to the quality of their in-ring ability, it's Macho of the three. So that's kind of, but no matter what you do, you're selling Ultimate Warrior. He was terrible. He was absolutely terrible. Yeah, just terrible. When they pushed, honestly, it's like I stopped watching wrestling when they pushed him over and he beat Hogan in that one WrestleMania. I can't remember what it was, just like, you know, because at the time I'm a kid. I don't know all the backstories of why Hogan's doing this or doing that and the movie career and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was my takeaway. That was my takeaway. So yeah. Thanks for letting me bring that one up again, Trev.
Yeah, man.
I was like, how can I not? Like, that's from my generation, man. Like, you know, like, and I've done the Macho Man impression with you before, you know, so yeah, it was pretty good. I won't do it here because I don't want to embarrass myself. But
no, when the question came up, I was like, guys, I'm not going to be able to give this question the justice it deserves. But my order was the same. I bought Hulk, held Macho Man, and sold Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, he was just terrible. Just absolutely. And he was just couldn't wrestle at all. And you hear stuff now where they're like, they didn't like wrestling with him because he like the great wrestlers, like, you know, they know how to make it look real without hurting you, you know, and he was apparently not that good at that. Him and Goldberg get a lot of the same pushback from people of like, yeah, this guy was not fun to wrestle because, you know, he didn't care about, you know, whether or not he was going to hurt you or not. And that's got to be a big part of it. So that was always interesting. But anyway, that's that. Here's another one from last week that I wanted to address as well. And then we're going to move on to the newer ones.
From Fat Fish, and if I remember, I believe this is a buy one, sell one, hold one. Mm-hmm. If Notre Dame joined a conference tomorrow, their competitive trajectory would, option A, skyrocket, better recruiting, resources, and playoff access. B, stay roughly the same. They trade independence perks for conference perks, and it's a net neutral. Or option C, they decline. They lose uniqueness, become, quote, just another program, and face tougher schedules.
So what's interesting about this, Trev, and why I wanted to bring it up today is because I think there's two layers of this. I think there's an immediate layer, and then there's a long-term layer. I think the immediate layer is I buy him in order in which he presented him. Immediate. I think there'd be an immediate skyrocketing. I don't know if it's about better recruiting per se, or resources or playoff access. I think it's more of perception. It'd be a big story, and Notre Dame is doing this, and I think there'd be an early, like an early kind of boost to their perception, which may impact their recruiting. There'd be a bigger boost initially in TV revenue, although I don't think that would be something that maybe long-term would be as beneficial as people think that it is. Because, again, if Notre Dame makes the playoff, here's the thing about skyrocketing. If they make the playoffs as a member of the Big Ten, they don't make as much money as they would if they made the playoffs as an independent. So that kind of gets made up in their TV revenue. So it's not actually a boost for Notre Dame, but I think their perception would be a skyrocket. Next, it'd probably, at worst, it stays the same. And then I don't see it being an immediate decline. But if you could fast forward 10 years, that's where my answer completely changes. And I'm exact opposite. I'm buying the decline. I'm holding that it stays the same, and I'm selling that they're going to skyrocket. Because at the end of the day, there's this belief, this push that we get from the national media that I think is complete nonsense. And I think that I don't even think they believe it when they say it, that somehow this is going to be good for Notre Dame, because the conferences won't be excited about Notre Dame. They won't want to push Notre Dame. And the only way Notre Dame joins a conference is if a conference gives into certain things from Notre Dame, which is only going to ramp up the jealousy and the trash talk and all those other type of things for Notre Dame. The backbiting. I mean, look at the ACC. You think if Notre Dame joined the league and got all these concessions to join the league, that they would just be like, hey, we're all happy now that we get Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame's got a better deal than all of us. They'd still keep crying and complaining about it. And so the only way Notre Dame would get anything out of this is like, okay, we'll give up any type of perks just to join. And that's why over a long term, it would not be beneficial. It would do it to them exactly what it did to Penn State, exactly what it's done to Miami and Florida State and a lot of the programs, where over time you just become part of a league as opposed to this unique brand that these programs used to be. That doesn't mean Miami hasn't been good. It doesn't mean Florida State has not been good. It just takes away from some of the uniqueness of your brand that they had at their peak in their independent days. And so that's why I think long-term, I think it would cause a decline, because your national appeal would be diminished. Oh, you're not going to get hammered for soft schedules. Yeah, you will. You're not going to get credit when you have a tough in-conference schedule. And whenever you get like an Indiana, Penn State caliber schedule, they're still going to hammer you for your schedule. And you're stuck, really, for the most part, in one region of the country. Oh, but you play the occasional West Coast game. They're already doing that. Now you're stuck playing in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Ohio and Iowa. I mean, you're now regionalized in where you play. And the only way you can go outside the region is if outside of your non-conference game, 9 conference games, you try to fit a Big 12 team in and an SEC team in. And then all of a sudden, are you having a manageable schedule? So I think this notion that playing in a league would somehow be good for Notre Dame is absolute nonsense, in my opinion. And why Notre Dame is so harshly fought against it, to where the only way they would join is if it just basically got to the point where if there was some rule passed that says Notre Dame can't get in if they don't join a conference, and then Notre Dame sued and lost the lawsuits, that's the only way Notre Dame joins a conference. The expansion of the tournament only makes it less likely that Notre Dame gets in, especially the SEC advocating for no automatic bids, which, again, this idea of what we criticized Mr. Bavacqua for last week, which is you need to be looking out for yourself. And the biggest advantage to not being to like the 2014 or to pushing against the 2014 playoff is it's good for you. And that's why backing the SEC's play right now is good for Notre Dame. So that's kind of why I long-term view it the way that I view it, Trev.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As far as immediate impact, some of it too, to add on to what you're saying, because I'm also a proponent that Notre Dame needs to stay independent for as long as they possibly can until the NCAA, and I don't think that they will. Notre Dame should stay independent unless they make a rule to where it's like, if you're independent, you can't make the playoffs or something stupid, which I don't think would happen, but that would be the only thing that I could foresee. But even
they would have to pass that law and win a legal battle against Notre Dame.
Right. The one thing that I think about as far as immediate impact is some of it would depend on the conference that they joined as far as competitive trajectory skyrocketing. Like, I don't think the narrative around Notre Dame would change if they just signed with the ACC, like by and large, because the Big Ten and the SEC and certain parts of the Big 12 also don't respect the ACC, because we also think that that is the lesser of the four main Power Four conferences. Like, I'm confident in saying that if Notre Dame joined the ACC tomorrow, they would become the favorites to win that league on FanDuel. I genuinely believe that, because right now they're the only team on FanDuel in the Power Four that have an over-under win total set at 11.5. Miami's is at like 10.5. I think the next closest is SMU at 8.5. And Miami's the runaway favorite to win that league. So I think Notre Dame would become the automatic favorite to win the ACC, and I don't think they would garner the respect as if they joined something like the Big Ten or obviously the SEC. But I agree with you big picture. I think the immediate impact, it would skyrocket.
Yep.
From Never Missed a Meal Wagner, buy, sell, hold. There is an increasing pressure for Notre Dame to win a championship now while the roster is in a peak position, even though recruiting is great. We all know with the portal, all it takes is one bad season for the wheels to fall off, i.e. Penn State.
Yeah. I don't, I'm going to sell this because I don't think Penn State's the wheels fell off for Penn State because of one bad season. I think the wheels fell off for Penn State because they overreacted to the one bad season. Now, I think that Jack Swarbrick should have fired Brian Kelly after 2016. That's my personal opinion. Having said that, there's a way to make that move where you overreact and create more problems than you solve. But he kind of erred on the side of, we don't need to overreact and go crazy. And the result was a lot of decisions he made that Brian Kelly didn't even make, which involved, look, I've said this before. I've talked to the coaches involved in this, and I can assure you that it was Jack Swarbrick and Chad Klunder that played a huge role in Notre Dame going out and getting Mike Elko and Chip Long, not Brian Kelly, who I also am quite confident in reporting this, was very much trying to get out of Notre Dame after 2016. It's just nobody wanted him. But it was that calm that allowed Notre Dame to quickly settle everything down and get back on track. It's when you overreact, and like Mike Norvell, I think, overreacted a lot to their struggles and things along those lines, which is why I don't think they're recovering well. Penn State overreacted. That's why they fired James Franklin and then went through that train wreck of a coaching search. So I think that it wasn't one bad season. It was the overreaction to that one bad season. But yes, there is increasing pressure on Notre Dame to win a championship now with the roster in its peak position. But where I'd push back is I'd say, well, what do you, or I'd not push back, but what I'd want to ask you, Never Missed a Meal Wagner, is when you say now, are you talking about like 2026 or are you talking about the next 2 to 3 year window? Because if you're talking 2026, I don't necessarily agree. If you're talking the next 2 to 3 minimum, like 2 to 4 year window, that I would agree with. If you can't win one in the next 3 to 4 years, then okay, that's a problem with kind of what you're doing. But like Notre Dame's not the only program spending a ton of money and doing everything that they need to do to win. That's why I say it's not just this year, but you got to get one over the next few years. That's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah, with this submission, I kind of split it up into 2 parts. I sell that Notre Dame, because of the portal, the wheels could fall off like Penn State. That's just something that I don't foresee happening while Freeman is here with the current structure, the way the program is. I don't see that happening. I do buy that there is increasing pressure for Notre Dame to win a championship within a given window. And really that window kind of started in 2025, and now we're kind of, I guess you could call it, in the middle of that window. what Notre Dame does, in my opinion, they run the risk of like always being the wait until conversation.
It's the
And
almost program. It's what I call them,
exactly.
Trev. They're almost always good enough to do it, but never actually quite good enough to do it.
Exactly. And when you look at the makeup of the roster this year with Leonard Moore coming back, all of your secondary for the most part remains intact. You have a returning starting quarterback. Mike Denbrock goes into year 3. And you just don't, Notre Dame doesn't want to get into the position where it's always wait until this happens for their championship winner to be in their prime opportunity. So, but I do buy that, the pressure is increasing.
Yep.
Another one from Never Missed a Meal Wagner. Buy, sell, hold each one football equipment trends. Oversized shoulder pads.
I sell it as a fan. I sell it. I mean, I buy it because I love the oversized shoulder pads just from an era of like it's the nostalgia. That's what it looked like when I was a kid, kind of thing. I absolutely sell it as a former football player who was in the era where it was kind of transitioning from smaller to bigger shoulder pads. And I had to, as a quarterback, look for ways to have smaller pads. I had to buy some, my last year of playing, it was my last year of playing. I ended up working at Art Monk's football camp that summer. And there was a bunch of leg pads from 8-year-olds that they had left behind. And so I grabbed a matching set of all of them, and I went out and played that year with youth football knee pads, thigh pads, and hip pads because the ones we had to use were so big they were designed to work for everyone. So like they meant they were the same thing for a D tackle as they were for a place kicker. And now we've kind of overcorrected, and now you don't basically have to wear anything lower body, and you guys are basically wearing Thursday upper outfits for games. So but as a fan, I loved it. As a player, no thank you. I'm selling that.
Yeah, I sell for basically every skilled position. There's something nostalgic a little bit about seeing like a big old offensive guard in just massive shoulder pads. But also in the same light, watching a 5'10", 180-pound corner run around in those massive pads also look kind of silly. So sell it overall, but definitely sell it for any skill position. How about neck rolls? Buy, sell, hold.
Sell. I was never a big neck roll fan. Part of that's because I never played defense, so I never got it. I thought the neck things that I thought were cool are the ones who was it? Like I think maybe Brian Cox, but more of like the vertical thing or the big black thing that kind of goes around. I thought those were cooler than neck rolls. I always thought neck rolls looked like a 1980s high school football movie type of thing that never really had any practical impact other than just what I mean. Like they had a practical impact, but they never like looked cool to me. You know what I mean? Like they had a practical impact, but I was like, yeah, I don't know, whatever. It's like, it's a visual effect, not so much like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing ever. There were neck things that I thought were sweet, but not the neck roll. Wasn't for me. But again, I played quarterback. So I bet you somebody that played linebacker thought they were the sweetest thing ever and couldn't wait to put them on in the same way that I couldn't wait to put on the wristband with the play sheets. That was that's what I wanted to always do. Yeah.
I'm actually buying neck rolls because I kind of put them all in the same category, like either the rolls or like the neck pad like extender things. I think those are sweet. I think of Matt Rose at Stanford, or who is the linebacker at Georgia Tech? Like Kyle Gefford or Gifford or something.
Yes.
Like
yes.
That looks sweet. When I look at a player that has a neck roll, I just think that guy just loves ball.
There's something about like, okay, the toughness factor that you obviously look at. No question. You think like, okay, that guy's a little bit different. Yeah. It's just aesthetically for me. It's like, yeah, that's, but one of the things you also think about that guy is what? He's probably not very athletic. I think that's also a stigma that you get when you watch those guys. Like, oh, he's probably not very athletic at all. So it's Kyle Efford. Yep. Is the guy from Georgia Tech. I'm trying to look for pictures of
that guy
those
rocks.
guys. Yeah, they were tough, hard-nosed dudes, man. And Efford had the old school kind of hype, jumped up kind of, neck rollish type of thing, but it was like under his pads. Yeah.
How about football pants above the knees, Brian?
Hard freaking sell. So I liked him slightly above my knee. I was constantly getting into it refs at games. Like I didn't like him all the way down over the knee. I kind of liked it right at my knee. But there's a practical reason for that, and to give padding to it. And I never thought that a knee pad is something that's going to prevent like a dangerous, like you're not going to not tear your ACL because you have a knee pad on. But when you land on your knee, it's like, especially on a harder surface, you kind of wish you had that knee pad on. So it's not like, oh, there's this big, rampant ACL problem, and it's all because guys aren't having their knee pads. I just think it looks stupid. I think it should be like 1 or 2, no more than like an inch above your knee. Because right now it's like the way that they're rolled up, it's like, dude, I got boxers that go down further than what some of these guys have on their football uniforms. It's getting stupid with how high it's getting up. And it's just like, I'm selling the heck out of that. It looks retarded. I'm sorry. It just looks dumb. I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
How about rib protectors?
Oh, bye. Because I don't know. They don't look great. They're a little uncomfortable to get used to, but take one shot into the ribs and you're like, man, I wish I would have had rib pads on. So yeah, I'll buy those.
Yeah, practically wearing them, I'm buying because they are very, very much needed. But like as far as like looking at somebody with a rib protector on, it's especially like the old school ones that are like super thick. Aesthetically, it doesn't look awesome, but practically speaking, they're fantastic. So
aesthetically, they look cool after a game when a quarterback rolls his jersey up to take him off and they're hanging there. Now it's like, okay, that's a quarterback put in some work. So yes.
How about face mask visors?
Those are sweet. Yeah, I buy those. Those are sweet.
Yeah,
and practically, it hides your eyes.
Yep, I wore a visor all throughout high school. I'm buying that one as well. And on top of everything else, it looks sweet. So I'm with you. Yep. One of my favorite. It was after Jimmy Clausen got in that scuffle and needed to wear a visor against Stanford in 2009. I just thought it looked sweet, and that's kind of what started that trend. And then the bobblehead helmet caps, the Guardian caps for helmets.
I am selling those. Those look ridiculous. Those look absolutely ridiculous. Those look like a video game where like the heads are way bigger than the bodies. I forget which. There's a video game where it's just looks ridiculous. Yeah. I understand that there's a practical reason, but I'm sorry, they just look ridiculous.
Agreed. From Akshat Shakar, buy, sell, hold. Bryce Young's development curve has come along significantly slower than expected at the end of the 2024 season or on his signing day.
Hard sell. Trevor and I tried to tell you guys this last year. We tried to. I think that for some fans, this is a buy for some fans, no question, but not for us. Because we told you guys before last year, pump the brakes on this is the year Bryce Young becomes an All-American star. We tried to tell you guys that. He's a very raw player and still needs a lot of work. And we remember, like, okay, the big plays he made, but do we remember him getting like 3 straight roughing the punter penalties or, running into the punter penalties against Georgia that almost proved real costly in that first drive? He was a guy that still needed a lot of technical work. There's some things where he's got to learn to kind of not put as much on himself. I think he presses too much. There's a lot of things he's got to learn. We told you guys before last year that it was more of the 26 season that we were looking to seeing him be better. We thought he'd be better than in year 2, and he was. I don't think it always shows in his production, but I don't know that his season last year was too far off of what I thought it would be. I don't know that the sack numbers weren't as good. I won't dispute that, but he was only 2 total pressures behind Boubacar Traore, and he did it on like 90-something fewer pass rushes. He just has to do a better job of getting to the quarterback and like making plays in the ball. But other than that, so like even if I thought he was slightly less effective last year than I thought he would be, and I think that's fair to say, Trev, for the both of us, the idea of it significantly slower, no, not even at all. I think his production was less than what I hoped it would be last year. His overall play was right in the ballpark of what we told you guys last year that he was going to do. We kept saying, give it a year. Give him one more year. This is going to be a year he gets better, but a year that he's not going to have that breakout yet. And so, no, that's why I sell this. Akshat Shakar, I'm not saying that you don't think it's significantly slower because your expectations may have been different than ours. But no, I don't think that's accurate for Trevor and I, because we had a whole offseason last year where we kept getting question after question, mailbags, the buy sell holds of how good Bryce Young was going to be. And we kept being like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on this Bryce Young hype. And this is exactly why we do this. It's not because we dislike a player and we want to throw shade or hate or whatever. It's because we know that if we're right and he performs to our level, everyone's going to consider him a bust or look at it this way. Oh, he's not nearly as good as I thought he was going to be. Well, maybe your expectations were the problem, not so much where he was with his development.
Agreed. This is a sell for me as well. And now I will say, Akshat, as far as your submission goes, I would much rather have this conversation than trying to convince others why like Drake Bowen is a good linebacker and should be in the Notre Dame starting lineup. I would rather have to have a conversation around tailoring somebody's expectations. And I get it. Son of a Hall of Famer. You look at his measurables. He's 6'7". He's 250, 60 pounds. Like, I understand why everybody wanted him to break out last year. But he was very raw coming out of high school. He was very raw when he was playing as a true freshman. That's why we think this year it's such a crucial year for him to see what kind of jump he makes. But no, I'm selling. I never thought his jump was going to come in 25. Neither did Brian. That's going to be this year.
Just got to show this real quick, Trev. This is my mug that I'm using. I just got this for my birthday, this giant tumbler. Nice. See what it says. Best uncle ever. So that's from my sister, Nikki, got it for me. And she actually has a channel she started on Instagram and Facebook where she does a lot of fitness stuff and like home cooking stuff and things like that for people trying to be healthy. So very proud of her. But my nephew, Zachary, who plays at my alma mater in high school, Atlantic Shores, and then her 3 daughters. So they're awesome little kids. But yeah, they get me a bunch of this best uncle ever stuff. So I'm using this today. So I'm having to drink some LMNT, those LMNT element things because of my issues over the weekend. I'm a little dehydrated. So she's got some of that stuff in here for electrolytes, but I just thought this mug was pretty cool. This tumbler is pretty cool. It's ginormous though, man. It's like, whew, it's crazy big. But awesome. Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out because I'm thankful to my sister and my kiddos for that. So appreciate that. Let's get to the next submission. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Trevor, because I think I've kind of discussed this before. This is from B. Jammin. It says, buy so hold. Leonard Moore will be a victim of his own success. He won't win the Jim Thorpe Award because teams won't challenge him.
I definitely understand your logic here, B. Jammin, but I'm actually going to sell this because for whatever reason, until proven otherwise, I think teams are just going to continue throwing at him for reasons that I just don't understand. Texas A&M did it. Stanford did it. Syracuse did it, although that kid was going into like his first or second ever start because Steve Angeli was hurt and Ricky Collins, I think, was also hurt. So no, I think he was making his first or second collegiate start. I don't necessarily put that on him, but Marcel Reed trying to target Leonard Moore a couple times, don't really understand that. I don't understand Frank Reich and Elijah Brown going after him the way that they did. Boise State kept trying to target him. That's why Leonard Moore came away with a pair of interceptions in that game. So until proven otherwise, I think your logic is sound. On paper, teams should stay away from Leonard Moore. Ergo, he doesn't win the Jim Thorpe Award because he gets targeted like 10 times over a 16-game season. But heck, man, until proven otherwise, I think teams are just going to keep throwing at him, and it's welcome. I hope that they do.
And he still doesn't need a ton of targets to make a lot of plays on the ball. That's what makes Leonard Moore so good. Number one, the only team that had really any kind of reason to go after him last year was Miami when he was matched up against, in the slot a couple times. But LSU or USC is the only team that had a legitimate reason to go after him last year. Just because of, the fact that, in their case, he was matched up against Mekhi Lemon. So yeah, go at him because, he's going to win some and Mekhi's going to win some. Now, Leonard won a lot more, but he did beat him once, for what was about 17-yard gain, something like that. But other than that, he shut him down. That's the only team that you can look at and say, okay, they had a good reason to go at him because of the way that Notre Dame used him. But yeah, some of those other teams, it made no sense why some of those teams went after him. No sense. Still don't get it.
No, not at all. How about this one for B-Jam? And buy, sell, hold. Quarterback Darian Mensah will be the most dangerous player Notre Dame's defense will face in the regular season.
I'm going to sell that. Reason I'm going to sell that is because I don't even think he's going to be the most dangerous player for Miami. I think the most dangerous player that they're going to face all season, in my opinion, is Malachi Toney. You could argue he's the most dangerous quarterback they're going to face, but even then, I don't know that I even buy that, Trev. Look, I think he's a very good quarterback, but I think most dangerous, I think Colton Joseph maybe belongs in that conversation a little bit.
Kevin Jennings.
Yeah, Kevin Jennings definitely belongs in that conversation a little bit. I think there's other guys that for Notre Dame are going to be more dangerous for them than Darian Mensah. Now he's probably the most dangerous passer that they're going to face. But when in the premise of what you're saying, I would sell that because I don't even think he's the most dangerous guy for Miami. It's definitely Malachi Toney.
Yeah, it's a sell for me as well. I think that's Malachi Toney will be the most dangerous player overall. And to your point, I don't even think he's going to be the most dangerous quarterback in general that Notre Dame is going to face either. I mean, Notre Dame is going to face some talented opponents this year. I will say I had an article come out about it over the weekend. Notre Dame's secondary will be tested, regardless of what you think of Notre Dame's regular season schedule. Big picture, their secondary will be tested in a multitude of different ways this regular season, which is something that I think is really interesting when you break down their schedule. I think Darian Mensah is a very talented passer, but as far as most dangerous player, it's a sell.
Yep.
Some more from B-Jam, and it's easier to fix a running back's fumbling issues than a wide receiver's dropping issues.
Definitely buy that. Dropping issues, in most cases, that's true. Fumbling issues usually tend to be a discipline and or technical problem, which is easier to address quickly. Receiver drops, some are technical, keep taking your eye off the ball. That takes a little while to fix, though. But a lot of times receiver drops can be more about a guy just doesn't have good hand-eye coordination, which can be improved, but a guy with bad hand-eye coordination doesn't develop better. Some guys have really good natural hand-eye coordination, but not with a football. So they've got to learn it and train it, but it can get there. But if a guy doesn't have good hand-eye coordination, it's not something you can necessarily fix. It's like a guy with stiff hips. You can make it as manageable as you want, but he's never going to turn into Elvis Dumerville or Von Miller, as a bender. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be the case. The other part is if a guy's drops are because of toughness, then that's another thing that doesn't get fixed as easily as fumbles. So yeah, that's why I think that's a buy for me.
I'm buying that one as well. Just in the most fundamental way that I can think about it, I think it's easier to coach up issues keeping the football in your hands rather than getting the football into your hands. Mm-hmm. I think that above all, agree with everything that you said, Brian. That's why I think fixing the fumbling issues is definitely easier to fix. I'm with you. How about this one? Best college football play-by-play announcers: Vern Lundquist, Keith Jackson, or Brent Musburger?
Man, I'm going to get some flack for this one. I'm going to buy Brent Musburger. I'm going to hold Vern Lundquist, and I'm going to sell Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson was iconic. I love games where Keith Jackson was on there, but I grew up at kind of the end of Keith Jackson's tenure, and I thought he made a lot of mistakes. I thought he was never overly familiar with the teams that he played, and I still remember in 1988, he spent like 10 minutes railing about how Tony Rice stepped out of bounds when even the guy he was doing the game, I think it was Pat Hayden, was like, dude, he's this far away from the end zone. Like, that's not the back line, and he just wouldn't let it go. But he still had the iconic voice. I just always thought Brent Musburger and Vern Lundquist were always really good. If you wanted to go with Vern instead of Brent, I'd be fine with that. I think those two, from what I remember, were much better at it than Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson just had more of that iconic voice, and Keith Jackson was great. He had no equal when it came to like the intro. Keith was legendary during the intro and during in pregame, but then when you got into the game, it's like I don't think he really knows anybody on these teams. You know what I mean? So, like, that that was the Keith Jackson I grew up on. Now, maybe if I was 10 years older, I'd have a different opinion, but that's kind of how I felt about that one.
Yeah, I'm selling Keith Jackson just because that was a little bit before my time. I didn't get to appreciate it in the moment. And here's my separator. I'm going to buy Vern Lundquist and I'm going to hold Brent Musburger by a very, very small margin.
Yeah.
When I think of Vern Lundquist, especially like during the time that I was like growing up listening to him, I think of like the SEC on CBS.
Yeah.
And he had some very iconic calls. Whereas like Brent Musburger, I don't know what his like I guess like the ESPN night games is where I grew up.
Because if you grew up in my era, he did so many Notre Dame games as a kid. Like he did the Miami 88 game.
Mm.
But when you grew up with Notre Dame playing most of their games on NBC.
Yep.
So you'd get the occasional Saturday night games, like he did Michigan State 06. So I totally get that, Trev. Growing up as a kid when Notre Dame was on ABC a lot, he was the voice of them, and so
Sure.
like even then though, like he did a great job with the Michigan State game in 06. He was really good with the Oklahoma game in 2012, but Vern is, when you think of SEC football, I don't know how you don't think of Vern Lundquist. He was the voice of SEC football for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's both of them are really good. You can't go wrong with either one of those guys, in my opinion.
100%.
But like when I think of Vern Lundquist, I can only remember one game growing up that Vern Lundquist did for Notre Dame. That's the only one I remember of him doing, and that was and I know he did more, but the only one I really remember is, oh man, what game was it? I can't remember what game it was. And it was they played in I think it was the 2010 Sun Bowl. It's the only game I remember Vern Lundquist doing of Notre Dame.
Yep.
So that's kind of also partly why. But now, if you want to talk about all around, I mean, Vern Lundquist is like Mike Tirico is the replacement of Vern Lundquist.
Yep.
Where he just was great. He did so many sports and was great at all of them. Like I still think when I think of the Masters, I think of Vern Lundquist. That's what made him so good.
100%. Another one from B. Jammin. Buy, sell, hold of these players you're most looking forward to see play in fall practice. Tight end Ian Premer, wide receiver Quincy Porter, or linebacker Kingston Viliamu-Asa.
Well, I'm going to sell Kingston just because I don't know that I'm looking forward to seeing him in fall camp. I actually kind of hope we maybe don't see as much of him. I want them to take their time with Kingston and let him get healthy. But also we've seen him before and he's great. We know he's great. I think the only thing that I don't know that I'm looking forward to seeing him play as much as I just want to see that he's healthy and ready to go. I would say I'll probably buy. It's a tough one. Like there's no right or wrong here. If I got to buy one, sell one, hold one, I'll go buy Ian Premer and then hold Quincy Porter, just because, I mean, we've seen a little bit of Quincy, but Ian Premer, you're just like, man, what is he going to be able to do at tight end this year? Where it's almost kind of like with Quincy, I kind of already have an expectation for Quincy. There's already a known element to Quincy for me that I have for him that I don't necessarily have for Ian Premer, because with him, it's like, I don't know what he's going to be like. We've never seen him in a college uniform. That kind of thing. But I'm excited to see all three of them. If I could just buy each one of them, like buy, sell, hold each one, I'm buying all of them. But if I had to do one each, that's the order I would go.
Yeah, if I'm doing one each, I'm gonna sell KVA. I'm with Brian. It's kind of, I just want to see him back healthy. But like there's nothing I need to see from him in fall practice outside of his health. I'm looking forward to it, but comparative between the two, I think I'm probably I'll buy Quincy Porter, hold Ian Premer, and then sell Kingston, just because Quincy brings that skill set to the wide receiver room that is not currently already there. Ian Premer, I'm looking forward to seeing, just when you compare it to Quincy Porter. I'm very much looking forward to that 6'4" big body type in the boundary. We kind of have that Ian Premer skill set, but I mean, don't mistake that. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him as well. Got the buy, sell, hold here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel after a much needed holiday weekend. And the submissions so far today, Brian, have not disappointed. That is for sure. Got one in here from our guy, Grubbing Up Heisman. Buy, sell, hold. Iowa will benefit from not pushing out Ferentz, showing an understanding of where they are as a program and future coaches. They will have loyalty and support from the university.
Yeah, you guys are on fire so far today with the questions, and this is another good one. I actually buy this because I don't know that a new coach in this era would have been the ideal position for Iowa. As long as the boosters still support Kirk Ferentz and the administration still supports Kirk Ferentz, you keep him there as long as he's winning, because there is that level of buy-in. The hard part is the succession at a place like that can be challenging, and there's that danger of, like, do you want to find the guy that's going to be his replacement, or do you just let him retire and then they go out and hire whoever? I've never been a big fan of the coaches in waiting thing. I think if it's the right guy, go for it. I advocated for Marcus Freeman being that with Brian Kelly, and it ended up happening a lot quicker than we thought it was going to. But yeah, I think in this era, it would have been real tough for Iowa to be making that kind of transition into a new coach while also going to this transition of a new era. I think having the old coach in this new era, because he's been a little bit more willing to adapt to it. They do a nice job of take care of their players. They had some portal losses, but not a ton. They have a lot more portal guys coming in. That's partly because there's a buy-in with the players, but also because the school is, to the degree that a place like Iowa can, taking care of their players.
Yeah, I'm actually going to buy this as well. I know I've had some hot takes to some when I talk about Iowa, but I'm buying this because of what you said, Grubbing Up Heisman. It's an understanding of where they are as a program. I think Iowa is always going to be within that 8 to 10 win year-over-year mark, with your occasional they rip off 11 if they get into the postseason. Like, if they get in, if they go and play in a bowl game, they could get to 12 if they make it to like a big New Year's Six bowl back in the old bowl format. But yeah, we've seen programs before that are at Iowa's level fire their head coach because they're striving to get to, well, we got to go make the playoffs now because that's what this new age of college football dictates. And the fact of the matter is that that's just not the program that Iowa is. They kind of set the floor in the Big Ten as far as like quality teams in that conference. I don't know if they've ever been favored to win the conference because they're going up against teams like Ohio State, Michigan when they're good. Now they're going up against Oregon. Indiana's definitely on the rise. But we've seen programs before make that mistake and thinking that they were something that they weren't. The fact of the matter is Iowa's won one consensus national championship in their program's history. That was back in 1958. I just looked that up. That is not common knowledge and something that I know off the top of my head. But I think Kirk Ferentz is one heck of a coach for what Iowa needs at this point in time. So I'm going to buy that as well. Another one from Grubbing Up Heisman. The easiest way to increase TV revenue would be to broadcast them for free, maximizing potential eyeballs, allowing networks to sell ad space for a higher price.
I guess I don't understand what he means by broadcast them for free. Like, what do you mean?
I have no idea.
Because every game on ABC or whatever is for free. Every game on NBC is free. You need a basic cable package. You don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, if you have you could plug in an old school TV that's got 5 channels, as long as it has CBS, NBC, and ABC, you're getting most of Notre Dame's games. Now, the reality is you can't just turn on and off the premium channels for Saturday afternoons. I'm sure, I guess there's a way they could do it, but I don't know that would make a ton of sense. So I don't think. Look, here's the end of the day. We're trying to fix a problem with solutions that don't actually address the problem. We're trying to say, okay, well, how do we figure out a way to up TV revenue? The TV revenue number is enormous. The problem isn't that they're not making enough TV revenue, period, end of sentence. The problem is they're not making enough TV revenue to overcome the fact that they are spending beyond their means. Like, that's ultimately the problem. And so it's like you're sitting here and you're like, dude, I am running up my credit card debt every month and I've got to go find a job that pays more. Oh, okay. That's one solution. but here's the deal, like that you're competing with a lot of people for that limited jobs that pay that much money. Here's another thought. How about you rein in your spending? Now, for some people, Trev, it's like they had good jobs, but then inflation has risen so much the last 5 years that their good job no longer is something that pays the bills. I get that. I'm sympathetic to that. That's not what's happening here. This isn't like they're a victim of inflation in a way that, the guy who was, had a nice blue collar job making 60 grand a year and in Indiana and is, stay at home mom and she's raising the kids because there is no job more important, in my opinion, than being a mom. My mom was able to be that and also work. I understand some people need to do that. My family needed to do that. But now all of a sudden it's like that $60,000 a year job is slowly increasing, but not at the rate in which inflation has skyrocketed in the last, 5 to 6 years. And now that $50,000, $60,000 a year job doesn't go as far as it used to. I understand that. I get that's a different struggle for families, and you got to find a way to increase revenue, or because you can only cut your household spending so much. Hey, I still got to keep the lights on. I still got to put food on the table, things like that. That's not what's happening here to these conferences and these teams. It's you have a $200,000 a year job living in northern Indiana, where $200,000 a year should go a very, very long way, but you're spending stupidly. I get a brand new SUV every year. I had a really nice $700,000 home, but for me and my spouse with 6 bedrooms, but I need an 8-bedroom house. So forget getting myself a really nice, $40,000 Mustang. I got to spend $200,000 on this car that shows how rich I am, as opposed to having any practical need whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, it's those things. It's your wife is out there buying her 20th Louis Vuitton, purse. That's what's going on right now in college football. It's not, oh man, they're just doing the best they can. That's just not bringing enough revenue. No, bullcrap. They're spending way beyond their means. And therefore, they're having a hard time making ends meet. And now they're trying to find new revenue, which leaves them to do desperate things, because none of them are told, hey, how about you guys manage your money better? Have the same thing happens with our government. Both parties. Hey, how about you guys rein in spending before you start talking about ways to increase revenue? Hey, we'll have a conversation about ways you can increase revenue after you fix your spending problem. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, that's what's going on right now. Fix your spending problem, then we can address and talk about ways to increase revenue. Fix that first. But we're not having it. Hey, how can we chase more dollars? No. How about you guys become more disciplined as academic entities, but then also as institutions as a whole? How about you guys rein in your costs first? Then we can talk about what do we need to do to raise revenue. Because if you have a spending problem, as you get more money, you're just going to keep spending more. It doesn't say, well, we're going to try to find $20 million more, but we're going to keep our spending right here. No, you're just going to then keep spending, and now we're in this circle of constantly looking for that. And that's why I say is we're trying to fix a problem, or we're trying to find solutions on things where in ways that's not TV revenue is not the problem. It's a $1 billion entity. It's that we have undisciplined spending. That is the problem.
Agreed completely. You have a lot of people in the powers that be that are living well above their means, and that's going to be the biggest issue with this. It's not how do we bring in more money. I'm with you completely.
Yep.
How about this one, man? Oklahoma goes the farthest in the college football playoff this season than any other SEC team.
I will buy that that's possible. I mean, it'd be hard. I will say this. I doubt that it's going to be what I have when we do our prediction show, Trev. I doubt that that's what's going to be my result. But I absolutely think Oklahoma's capable of being the SEC team that goes the furthest. Certainly. So I'll buy that it's possible. I mean, if you were to ask my prediction, I'd probably say Texas. But the other part of this too, Trev, is what's the bracket going to look like? Sometimes you get a little bit of an easier, pathway. I think that's helped Ole Miss a little bit this year. I don't know that Ole Miss was one of the 4 best teams in the country. I just think that they had a bracket that, made things a lot easier. I don't know. just a lot that we don't know, but I'll buy that they have a legitimate opportunity to be the SEC team that goes further. So does Texas, so does Georgia, and those would probably be my three right now.
Yeah, those would probably be my three as well. As of today on May 26th, I'm going to sell it. Would not surprise me if I'm wrong at all. I would go with Texas. They're the only team that is shown out of the SEC capable of going on a multi-game run. I mean, Alabama won a game last year and then got the doors blown off of them the following game.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia has yet to make it out of the quarterfinals. You know, that's
something you just said is nuts. The last 2 years, freaking Alabama has won more playoff games than Georgia.
Isn't that wild?
That's wild.
I know. I know.
Very wild.
From BK's last brain cell, buy, sell, hold, the Notre Dame versus Wisconsin game is more likely to end with Notre Dame winning by 17 or less instead of 35 plus.
You know, Trev, part of me wants to buy that because I understand where he's coming from here. I don't think this is going to be like a 52-3 game. Could it be? Of course it could be. Anything can happen. I mean, Georgia beat Oregon 49-3 not that long ago. It's more so just like, I don't know that Notre Dame's going to come out just peak rocking game one and put up, 42 plus points in the opener. But I could certainly see that. It'd be a 42-7 game if the defense lights up Wisconsin. I just think that even game one on the defense is going to be a little bit of new guys in some new places, and you're going to give up some plays. You're playing a mobile quarterback that's going to be able to use his legs to, set up a couple scores. And, I could see it being a 31-14 game where Wisconsin scores last, and Notre Dame dominates the game, but they had some missed opportunities, missed a field goal, fumbled the ball at the 5, something like that. Because, you had the sloppy game one things where you're like, man, geez, they weren't as dominant as you think. But in reality, they were. Just some things happened. I could see that as possibly being more, I think you could make a case for that, for being more likely than they just come out game one ripping and rolling. I think you can make a case of that because of how week ones tend to be. Having said that, I'm selling, because what we're missing here is the notion of this is victim numero uno. If this team has the revenge tour mindset that we think that they're going to have, this is going to be a team that a lot gets taken out on, in my opinion. There's going to be a lot of pent-up frustration for this football team, and I have a feeling that Wisconsin is going to feel a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm going to sell this one as well. I mean, FanDuel right now has Notre Dame as 19.5-point favorites. I think that's more realistic than either of these two options. I mean, that's the thing, is there is an in-between winning by 5 touchdowns and winning by 2 touchdowns. And that's where I think Notre Dame is going to live in this. Would not shock me at all if they beat Wisconsin by 3 touchdowns. And winning by 35 points even has varying degrees. I mean, 38-3 is winning by 35 points. It doesn't always necessarily have to be, Notre Dame won 63-10. So I don't see them. I do not see this being a 2-touchdown game. Genuinely, I don't, for a lot of the reasons that Brian listed out. And then 3 of NC State, Oklahoma State, Kentucky, and Washington will end up will end the season in the top 20. One will push for the playoffs.
I'm going to sell the first part. Is it possible? It's possible all 4 of those teams could finish in the top 20. But there's no way I'm going to go with 3 of them, and here's why. With NC State, do they have the potential to be a top 20 team? Certainly. They did lose a lot last year, and I don't have a lot of faith in Dave Doran to lead a team that can be that. I mean, Trev, if you really think about it, Dave Doran not that long ago had a team where all 4 of his starting defensive linemen and a backup were, I think, 3rd or 4th round draft picks or higher. And they also had a middle linebacker who was a 3rd round draft pick. You also had Ryan Finley at quarterback. That was a really talented team. And that team lost 4 games and finished 23rd. His best AP finish ever was 20th in 2021. And this is a guy that's been there for over a decade. So guy that's been there 10 plus years, lost several of his best players in the offseason, and I'm all of a sudden going to buy that he's going to be a top 20 coach. Nah, I can't do that with him. Oklahoma State, that's a massive turnaround for them to make in 1 year. Is it possible? Definitely possible in the Big 12, Trev. Definitely possible. And then I look forward to when we get to July, when we do our conference previews, we're going to have some fun talking about Oklahoma State because they are going to be one of the biggest wild card teams in the country this year. Possible, but can't predict it. Kentucky, again, possible, can't predict it. They're a team that went, 3-9 last year, 4-8, lost 41-0 to Louisville. Yeah, I'm excited about Will Stein, but first year as a new first-time head coach and a revamped roster with a pretty challenging schedule. Is it possible? Yes. Am I predicting it? No. The only one that I would argue has a chance and that I'd feel no problem predicting to be in the top 20 is Washington. They're not going to be in my preseason top 20 because I have some question marks, but they are certainly capable of being a top 20 team. But even still, he hasn't done it yet at Washington in 2 years. In 5 years as a Power 4 head coach, as a full-time Power 4 head coach, he's got one top 25 finish, and that was 2023 at Arizona, where they finished 11th. So even there, you have a lot to prove. So 4 coaches with a lot to prove, either because they've never done it or because they're new, or at least new at those places. I'm not predicting that 3 of them are going to get there. And yeah, I could see one of them making a push for the playoffs because he doesn't say makes the playoffs, just makes his own push. I could see Washington in November being if you can win this game or that game, you've got a shot to get in there. I could certainly see that.
Yeah, all in all, I think I'm going to sell this submission in its entirety. I think it's a fair question, but when you take a look at some of I definitely sell that. I think more likely somebody could end up around the top 20 than making a push for the playoffs, in my opinion, because then you start looking at conference breakdowns. But I mean, with NC State and Washington, their situations are very similar in that they need to figure out how to win away from home. I think NC State and Washington last year lost a combined 2, maybe 3 times at home. But both teams ended the regular season unranked because they can't figure out how to win on the road. Plus, I'm with you, Brian. I don't have a lot of faith in Dave Doran. And since I've entered the Big Ten, Jed Fish is entering a very interesting season with the Huskies as well. And then Kentucky could end up in the top 20. I think a lot of things would have to go right for Will Stein. I think they have a lot of great pieces in place, but I think that could be more of a 2027 conversation than his first year off rip. And I feel the same way about Oklahoma State, but as we all know, the Big 12 is the Wild West. The last team that was projected to finish dead last in the conference in Arizona State in 2024 won the whole dang thing and made the playoffs. So, I mean, we really, truly just don't know. But, yeah, I'm going to sell it in its entirety. Another one from BK's last brain cell. Buy, sell, hold. Armel Mukum will lead the defensive tackle position in sacks.
I'll buy it's a possibility. I will, because I don't think the leader in sacks will be necessarily one of the starters. I think it's Jason. Here's my top candidates: Jason Onye, Armel Mukum, and maybe Elijah Hughes or Chris Burgess. I don't think Francis Brew and Tion Gray will be that, but it's possible because the leader in sacks last year, D-tackle, had 1.5. Francis Brew had 1 last year, 1 the year before. So, I mean, neither of those guys are big sack guys. They're dominant run stuffers, which is why I could see one of the D tackles that maybe plays in more passing downs or has more of that kind of pass rushing prowess could lead him in sacks. It may only take 2 to 2.5 to lead this defense in sacks this year at D tackle, among the D tackles. So I think Armel has a chance to do that. I don't know that I'd predict them to do that because I haven't made that prediction yet, but here's how sometimes I'll do a buy, sell, hold. It's just, what's my initial reaction when you say that? Like, whoa, no way. Then that's going to lead me to hold. But as soon as I read it, it's like, oh, that's possible. And that's why I buy it.
No, I get that. I get that completely. I'm buying it, but I don't feel great about it. But here's why. It has nothing to do with Armel Mukum. It's just because the room itself is very deep. Like, if I insert anybody else's name in that, it wouldn't shock me because of the numbers of the defensive tackle sack numbers last year. I mean, it would not shock me if Tion Gray led the defensive tackle room in sacks if he gets like 3 in 15 games and everybody else has like 2, 2.5, somebody has 1.5. But yeah, I buy it because I think that his skill set fits that. But there's a good amount of people in that D tackle room that could. How about at linebacker, Brian? Jaden Ausberry would lead the linebacker room in sacks and tackles for loss.
I buy it as a possibility. I wouldn't predict it. part of this, number one, the biggest thing that this factors in is what's Kingston Viliamaasa's health and stats or snaps production this year. I don't know. If Kingston doesn't play till game 4, then it might be a little bit tougher for him to do that. The reality is the two linebackers that led the position in tackles for loss the last 2 seasons are back. Kingston led him last year, and then Jaden Alsbury led him in that category the year before. So Jalen Sneed is the guy that led him in sacks in 2024, and then last year, obviously, Kingston led him in sacks in 2024, but he only had one more than Jaden Alsbury, who had 2. So they're both possible. I would probably lean towards Kingston in sacks and maybe Drake Bowen in tackles for loss this year, if it's not one of those two. But it's certainly possible that Jaden could do it because he's been very productive the last 2 years. Doesn't get credit for it, but he's been very productive the last couple of years. It could also be Jalen Sneed. There's just a lot of things that factor into this, with the biggest one being what's Kingston's health. Is he ready to go game 1, then I think it'll be Kingston. Just because now here's the thing you could do is Trev, we may monitor that this year. What is Kingston's production as a linebacker compared to his third down production where he's coming off the edge? That should be counted for in that. You say, well, look, Kingston led him in tackles for loss this year, but half of his were in passing downs as an edge rusher, not an off-ball linebacker. Then we have that conversation. That doesn't make him any less valuable as a player. It's just it gives more of a true linebacker thing, because I don't know in those situations that Kingston or Jalen Sneed would qualify as linebackers in those circumstances. They're more edge rushers. And so it's not about talent, like trying to diminish how good they are. It's more about trying to get an understanding of what's the difference of what impact the guy's making as an off-ball linebacker compared to, a pass rushing type of player. And not one's better, one's worse. It's just having an understanding of the context of a player's production more than anything.
Speaking of Jalen Sneed, how about this from BK's last brain cell? By so hold, Jalen Sneed will lead the linebacking room in pass breakups and interceptions.
So, yeah, I think that'll I'm going to sell that.
Yeah, I'm going to sell that as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good, man. I think the leading candidate right now, in my eyes, I could see Drake Bowen having a big season, getting his hand in passing lanes. I do. I like Jalen Sneed. I think he had his most consistent offseason. Even with him having his most consistent offseason, that was not the strength of his game, nor do I think that would be.
Nor will he be in a position to do that a lot, Trev. I mean, a lot of times on passing situations, he's going after the quarterback, not dropping the coverage. Do you know who led the linebackers? And I know you know the answer to this, Trev, but do you guys know what linebacker led the team in pass breakups last year at the linebacker position? And he had more than double than anybody else. This is Drake Bowen. Kingston was the only linebacker to have a interception, but if you still look at passes defensed, it was still Drake Bowen who had 4. Kingston was next with 2 breakups, and then he had 1 interception, and nobody else is close. Jalen Sneed had 0 last year because, again, why? Because he was usually rushing the quarterback when he was on the field in those situations. So that's why I say it won't be him. Not that he's not capable of being productive there. It's my point is simply he won't be asked to do a lot of dropping in coverage. So any breakups or picks he would have would, in most instances, be he's jumping up and breaking up a pass from a rushing standpoint.
Let's kick it back to the secondary. Buy, sell, hold. Both safeties will have 4 picks by the end of the season.
That I buy. Tay had 4 last year in only 10 games. Adon had 2. He had 2 official interceptions. He had 3 on the season, but the one on the 2-point conversion doesn't count in the official stats as an interception. So, that was a little bit of bad luck in that particular instance. But I think once you count the season's end, which I include playoffs, when you say season's end, I include postseason. I think they'll both be there.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'd go as far to say they might be closer hit in the regular season too. That would not shock me.
If they're both healthy, it's possible. And if Adon doesn't keep getting tossed for targeting.
Agreed. From Black Irish 864, our guy Christopher Galloway, buy, sell, hold. The Notre Dame defensive line is so dominant that teams have had a difficult time getting to 100 yards rushing.
I'll buy that. Yeah, I'll buy that. That was kind of the case last year. They were literally at 100 yards per game on the season. And non-option teams were in the 80s. I think, what did we say the other week, Trev? Like 89, something like that, I think is what it was. If you take out Navy. So, yeah, I buy that. And the D-line, part of that's because the D-line is dominant. The other part of that is that's just Chris Ash's defense. That's a big part of what he wants to do is to shut down the other team's ability to run. Now, that's not meant to discredit either side because you can have all the desire to stop another team from running the ball all you want, Trev, but if you don't have the players to pull it off, then you're going to give up rushing yards.
100%.
You could also have the talent to shut down a run game, but if the D coordinator doesn't put you in position to do that, then you're also not going to be effective. It takes a D coordinator whose desire is first and foremost to shut down the run, to go with a group of talented players that can get that done. And if you look at the first couple games when the linebackers were clearly not comfortable with what Chris Ash was asking them to do, and even in those two games, Trev, they weren't bad at shutting down the run in either one of those games. And when you look at the numbers that Miami had, the numbers that A&M had, Miami only had 134 yards rushing and A&M only had 128. And a chunk of that 128 was the quarterback, Marcel Reed, scrambling. And so I think even in those two games with the linebackers just clearly not comfortable with what they were being asked to do, Notre Dame was still pretty good at shutting down the run in those games, Trev. So I'm actually going to go look at this. I know that was one of, I believe, the three worst rushing performances by both teams. I believe it was it was the fourth worst for Miami of the regular season. And for A&M, it was fourth, I guess. So regular season, it was third worst of the regular season. So, yeah, it was close. So, again, neither game was great by the Notre Dame defense. And even still, they were one of the 3 or 4 worst performances those teams had all year in production. That's why I say if you play those teams later in the year, I don't know that they're going to have the success that they had. Now, maybe the Notre Dame offense also doesn't have the success because of, injuries on the O-line, or those teams are also got better. I'm just simply saying in this one particular area, I'm not trying to have if Notre Dame played A&M or Miami later in the year, they'd have killed them. I'm not saying that at all. I'm simply saying the one thing I am confident saying would have been different later in the year would be the rushing game success wouldn't have been as effective. Because, they weren't great running at Notre Dame. They were able to grind out some of the tough yards, but that's because the linebackers really didn't know what they were doing those first couple games. And they really struggled, all of them. Now, Kingston had some big moments as a pass rusher, but if you go break down his film as an off-ball linebacker, he also struggled the first few games, just like Drake did, just like Jaden Alsbury did, just like Jalen Sneed did. They all struggled the first few games. When it came to shutting down the run. And then as they got more comfortable with what Chris Ash was asking them to do, because it was very different. Mike, Al Golden was very much you're attacking the B gap, 100 miles an hour and downhill and all that type of stuff. Whereas Chris Ash was more of we're going to read and react and fit off of the front. And they just weren't super comfortable with that early on. As they got better at that, then the run defense got way better.
Yeah, option teams aside, I'm going to buy this one too, Chris. Notre Dame's rush defense last year took a massive step in the right direction, and they'll be tested again this year. Off jump, we just got done talking about how bad we think Notre Dame could beat Wisconsin. They'll be tested. They got good portal pickups at running back. Colton Joseph rushed for 172 yards against Indiana's defense last year. Now,
by far, Indiana's worst rush defense performance was trying to defend Colton Joseph. By far.
Yes, by a lot. And then, and it's not just Wisconsin. LJ Martin comes back at BYU. I think he's going to be one of the better running backs in the country. Obviously, Miami's running back room is very, very daunting with Mark Fletcher, Jamar Brown coming back. So there's going to be a lot. Kevin Jennings with his legs when they play them on senior day. So they'll be
BYU, Bear Bachmeier also.
Yep.
You mentioned LJ Martin, but Bear Bachmeier also a legitimate running threat. Yeah. Well, and Trev, for context, last year, Old Dominion, who was quarterbacked by Colton Joseph, who's now the quarterback of Wisconsin, they rushed for 218 yards on only 23 carries against Indiana. The next most rushing yards Indiana gave up all season was 117 yards to Penn State. They averaged 9.5 yards per carry in that game. The next highest margin that Indiana gave up, Indiana did not give up more than 3.6 was the most they gave up in between Old Dominion and Miami. That's it. 117 yards was the most they gave up in between Notre Dame and Miami. They gave up 5.2 yards per carry against Miami. 70 of that, and they gave up 110 yards. 70 of that was on one carry. They had that one long touchdown run by Mark Fletcher. You take that out, and Miami could not run the ball in Indiana. Well, why? Colton Joseph is the reason they did that in the opener. I mean, he's the reason why. So, no, you're absolutely correct. That's why the offense has got to jump on them early. And we'll preview Wisconsin next week, but that's why you got to jump on them early to make sure that they can't. His legs just become less of a factor.
Another one from Black Irish. Notre Dame's run game has been highly successful this season, will be highly successful this season because teams have underestimated the replacements of Jeremiah Love and J.D. Price.
I'm gonna sell that, and because I think that people have underestimated the replacements of Jeremiah Love and Jadari Price. Right, I believe that to be true. Having said that, I don't think the run game will be successful because people are underrating those backs. I think the run game is going to be successful because I think the offensive line is going to drive a lot more successful rushing attack. Like, Trev, I was watching, I'm trying to think what it was. I was watching some 2017 highlights the other day. And I remember it, but then you see it again and you're just like, look at Deion McIntosh running through just wide open holes.
Yeah.
Like at Michigan State in the second half, the number 2 rush defense in the country. Look at him ripping up North Carolina in Ian Book's first start. And it's like, yeah, they were good backs, but I mean, I'm watching the 70-something yard touchdown run for Josh Adams against North Carolina, and Quentin Nelson just destroys some guy, and then Hunter Bivin comes around and he makes a really nice block, and Josh cuts behind him, and that was with a backup guard on the field, and they were able to, you know what I mean? Because Hunter Bivin was still a really good player at Notre Dame. He just happened to be there at the wrong time because he's behind Alex Bars and Quentin Nelson, but there's a lot of years where Hunter Bivin starts at guard for Notre Dame and you're like, he's good. He's a good player. And so you look at those things, Trev, but that's going to be the driver of that success. First and foremost, it'll be, wow, how good is this offensive line? So the running backs being underestimated is certainly a factor. It's just not the number one factor, which is what we're responding to in your submission.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm selling this one as well. Also because coaches think very differently from what fans do. It's very easy for fans to be like, what are you going to do without Love and Price? And that's kind of a lot of the anti-ammunition against Notre Dame this season. I don't think coaches will view it that way. I think coaches will view it as like, okay, this is a program that habitually puts out 1,000-yard rushers. Mm-hmm. Going back to 2015 with CJ Prosise. Like, that Notre Dame is not a team that you want to overlook their rushing attack. And so that combined with, I think, the high level of success our offensive line will have, like, the opposing coaches are going to look at this like, I guess the situation they're in now without Love and Price is they're having a running back step into their starting lineup who averaged 9.3 yards a carry last year and didn't have 2 carries for 19 yards on the season. So I don't think other teams will overlook them. From PJC 1122, buy one, sell one, hold one, dynamic defensive end duos as recruits. First one, Aaron Lynch and Stephon Tuitt. Second is Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Tade. And then third option is the potential signings of Abraham Cisse and Jackson Vaughn.
That is a tough one. Oh, man. So first of all, let me just say, I don't want to hold or sell any of them. Because the reality is, Trevor, they were all elite prospects. But I also don't want to just completely ignore the submission. So I'm going to do my best to respond to this. So I'm just going to go off of, looking at the submission as recruits. Man, I'm going to have to go with my number one being the Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt duo. Because I viewed them both as 5 stars. To me, they were both top 10 to 15 caliber prospects. I think Aaron Lynch was close to being a top 5 national prospect. And one of the services actually had him it was Rivals, maybe. 247 had him as the number 6 player in the country. It was 6, 15, and 28. Stephon Tuitt was ranked high by Rivals. They had him 22. ESPN and 247, not as high. It was 38 on 247. But, like, they were both viewed as big-time players by all but one service, and the only one that had Stephon Tuitt low was ESPN, who's garbage, and that was because of the fact that, you know, he played in the Army game and not their dumb bowl game. But when I look at like Rodney Dunham, for example, number one, if you just took at my evaluation, it's very close. I would probably put, you know, like Rodney is up there. I mean, he was a very, very talented player. But when you look at Rodney and Ebenezer, Rodney was ranked high like Aaron was. He was 8th, 9th, and 31st, right? He was ranked high like they were. Ebenezer was not. Ebenezer was ranked number 38 by Rivals on 3, but he was ranked number 264 by ESPN and number 150 by 247. So in that regard, you can't compare those two. As of right now, Abraham Cisse is ranked as the number 16 player in the country by on 3 Rivals, but I believe ESPN has, and he's ranked high on 247 as well, not quite as high. But ranked number 27, so he's 16 and 27, so he's not quite where those guys were. And then you look at Jackson Vaughn, he obviously is not ranked nearly as high, and it's a bullcrap ranking. Now, part of the premise that he had that we didn't have room for was looking at him as juniors. I don't think Stephon and Aaron, like, I don't quite remember where they were ranked as juniors, but I had them ranked very high as juniors. So if I'm looking at it from my standpoint, so from a recruiting ranking standpoint, it's literally buy, sell, hold in the order that they're listed, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. One service has Flip and Jackson Vaughn as a 3-star. Rivals on 3 does, which is garbage rankings. Somebody told me that the guy that is responsible for his ranking was like, oh, he doesn't have enough length and explosiveness. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have a 6'1.5", 210-pound kid from Indiana that Notre Dame doesn't even want, ranked as a top 250 player and a 4-star, but Jackson Vaughn, who's a legit 6'3", 220 plus with length, is a 3-star? Nonsense. It's a stupid ranking. There's no justification for it. It's as dumb as having CJ Carr outside the top 200. It's that stupid. It's as dumb as having Drake Bowen outside the top 200. But it just, from a recruiting ranking standpoint, they just can't compete with what Aaron and Stephon. And even though Stephon and Aaron both jumped in ranking as seniors, they were still ranked pretty high, if I remember correctly, as juniors. For me, I had Aaron Lynch as a 5-star as a junior. I had Stephon probably in the top 50 range as a junior. He took a jump as a senior. The reason I'd still go with them is because I think as juniors, they were much closer to their ceilings than what Rodney and Ebenezer were as juniors. Ebenezer and Rodney both had big jumps as seniors and jumped up in the rankings. Abraham is that kind of prospect. Jackson is not. Now, as far as what his ranking is, in my evaluation, this is a very close one. In my evaluation, I'm actually buying Lynch and Tuitt. I'm holding Cisse and Jackson Vaughn, and I'd sell Rodney and Ebenezer because I think both Jackson Vaughn and Cisse are both more advanced than what Ebenezer and Rodney were as juniors. So that would be where I would get my ranking from. But, man, they're all really, really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Like, these are win-win-win. But I want to honor your question and answer it. So, as juniors, Lynch and Tuitt be my number 1 group. Cisse and Vaughn would be my number 2. And then Dunham and the Utade would be my number 3.
Good deal. From Christopher Crosby, buy one, sell one, hold one for the upcoming season. Notre Dame wins a national championship. CJ Carr wins the Davey O'Brien, and Leonard Moore wins the Jim Thorpe.
I'm going to buy that they win a championship because I'm predicting that. I'm going to hold that CJ Carr wins Davey O'Brien just because there's so many good quarterbacks. I have a feeling that this is going to be a year where you could have one quarterback win Davey O'Brien who's not the same as the quarterback who wins the Heisman, who's not the same as the quarterback who wins the Maxwell.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen that before. Like, Brady Quinn, I think it was 05, I believe, was that the year that Brady won the Maxwell? It was 05, right?
I thought it was 06.
Let me go look here real quick. Maxwell. Okay, so he won Sammy Ball in 05. And it's funny, Brady was a second-team All-American in 06, but third in 05. He was better in 05 than he was in 06. But anyway, in 06, he won the Maxwell Award and the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award and the Singular All-America Player of the Year Award, but he was a second-team All-American, and he finished second in the Heisman behind Troy Smith. We've seen that in several years. There's been some recently where you'd had a different quarterback win different awards. And I think this will be one of those years because there's so many good quarterbacks. I could see like CJ winning the Heisman, and yet like Drew Mestemaker throws for 4,300 yards in the Big 12 and he wins Davey O'Brien, and Arch Manning or Dante wins the Maxwell. Like some, or mix them around any way that you want. I think this will be one of those years where it'll be tougher for one quarterback to just run the table on all the awards that go to quarterbacks, that primarily go to quarterbacks. That's my takeaway on that, Trev. What say you?
We have the same exact order. I'm buying Notre Dame wins the championship. I'm with you in that prediction. I'm selling Leonard Moore wins Jim Thorpe. I'd love nothing more, but knowing that committee, some defensive back from Air Forces.
DJ McKinney or Christian Gray will win it before Leonard Moore.
Yeah.
Like based on recent history. Yeah. Agree.
Another one from Christopher Crosby. Despite how unpopular a 2014 playoff is amongst fans, we will end up there eventually.
Sadly, I agree with that. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that you're wrong. I just, I mean, when it's up to the SEC to hold the fort, it makes for a discouraging reality, Trev. When that's the case, it makes for a very discouraging reality. I just think there's too much momentum for a 2014 playoff right now, and that's obviously problematic. So, yeah, unfortunately I see that being the case. Now, if the SEC can hold firm, then great. Like, there's no reason for them to give in right now, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Very interesting how it goes. But I think eventually we get there. I really hope that I'm wrong, because I think it's a terrible idea. But it's just it's everyone versus the SEC right now, unfortunately. And I'm over there on the SEC side, which just makes me want to kind of barf a little bit. But right is right. And I don't even care. I've had people say, well, the SEC motives are I don't care what their motives are. The fact is that's the right call. I love Greg Sankey like politely calling out Tony Petitti as a liar, by the way, which was beautiful. Did you hear what he said, Trev, about the 16-team playoff? It was beautiful. I don't know why. That's interesting that he said they didn't talk about it, because he's the one that brought it up. He's the one that pitched expanding beyond 12. We're good at 12. So it's almost like Tony Petitti is trying to call the bluff of the SEC and say, hey, if you won't move to 24, then we're not going to expand at all. And the SEC's like, okay, cool. We're fine with this. We're the one that keeps getting 4 or 5 teams in every year. You know what I mean? Like, we're not mad about this. So cool. Yeah, we'll stay at 12. We're not the ones pushing for expansion. They got everything they wanted. Change how they do this and change how they do that, which how this is measured and that's measured, and ESPN's push and all this. And you get to 5 SEC teams in a down year in the SEC. Why would they care about changing? Now, here's what I will say, and I said this to Christopher in a private conversation. We better pray that if you're someone who's against the 2014 playoff, you better hope and wish that more than 3 SEC teams get in this year. Because the fastest way for the SEC to do a 180 is there a year where only 2, maybe 3 of their teams makes it in. Now, 3 you can live with, because I think they only had 3 in 2024, correct? It was Georgia, Texas, and I thought they had a 3rd team in.
Tennessee.
But if you have a year where there's like 2 or even 3 in 3 years, 2 times you had only 3 in 3 years, then maybe they start to kind of come around to that a little bit. But the SEC's thing is, you guys are the ones hurting for money, not us, because we're making a ton of money with our SEC championship game. And because we started it, and we're making a ton of money from our ESPN contract. You guys are the ones that out leverage yourselves by going to 18 instead of 16. And so, yeah, like we're good. So I right now I'm team SEC when it comes to that, man. So
I unfortunately am going to buy this as well. I'm going to file this under the things that is unpopular amongst fans, but still happens anyways. All the roads to get there were different, but conference realignment was unpopular amongst fans. That still
he
happened.
still did it.
I mean, the transfer portal and how it's operated now is wildly unpopular, I believe, amongst fans. That's still the Wild West to varying degrees. This is just going to be that next. I mean, at the time, let's be real. At the time, expanding to 12 was wildly unpopular amongst a lot of fans too, and then that still happened too. Now, I am a fan of the 12-team playoff, but that still happened, and I have no reason to believe that there.
I wasn't initially a fan of the 12, and I thought it would do it. It's going to cheapen the regular season and blah, 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 blah. Vince is the one that convinced me that this is actually a good idea. So I eventually came around even before the 12-team playoff started. I eventually came around because Vince made a great argument about it. I'm like, dude, that's a really good argument. And I get that. I'm more open to the idea now. But 24 will not have the same positive impact of what this has.
Agreed. Then another one from Christopher Crosby. By so hold, the SEC will get 3 teams in the playoff this season. Alabama will not be one of them.
I'm going to sell that. I actually think we will see 4 in the playoffs. I think this is a year where the SEC is going to be even better than they were last year. And this year, I think the strength of schedule for the SEC is going to be even better than it was last year but it's going to be justified this year where it wasn't justified last year. I actually think, as we've said, look, I didn't pick the SEC to be a down the last 2 years because I'm anti-SEC. I do hate the SEC, but I also, more than anything else, value being right and doing a job in a good way where I don't let my emotions impact my evaluations. And so I think we were right the last 2 years the SEC was down. I think we were proven right by how the seasons played out, how the playoffs played out. We said Alabama has no business being in the playoffs. We said we didn't think Oklahoma really belonged there as a team. Now, we thought they belonged based on their resume, but we thought they were not even close to being a top 10 actual team, quality of their team. And guess what? They both played in a super ugly first-round game, and the winner of that game got their doors blown off in the next round by Indiana. It's exactly how we thought it was going to play out. And, Ole Miss makes a run. They beat Georgia, guarantees an SEC team in the Final Four, and that SEC team got outplayed in a game where Miami didn't even play that well. And I would argue that might be the worst game that Miami played in the playoffs. They had so many discipline issues. Like the A&M game was uglier, but I think A&M was a better team. But I think that Miami didn't even play that great. I thought Miami played better against Indiana than they did Ole Miss. My opinion. I just think that Indiana was a way better team. I think this year we'll see more than 3. Bice a hold that Alabama will not be one of them. I'm going to hold that, Trev, simply because we need to see. There's some concerns we have about Alabama in that will he actually make the changes needed to make it? But I still believe Alabama has a playoff caliber roster. That's the difference. But it's hard for me to pick right now if they're going to be one because I don't know who their quarterback is going to be yet, much less some other things. So I'm going to hold off on them. But Alabama's roster is such that I won't be shocked if they make the playoff. I don't know that I'd pick them to make the playoff if you and I were doing a playoff prediction show tomorrow. I don't know that they'd be in. But they absolutely have the roster that if a couple things go their way, including, the committee still thinking this is Nick Saban's Alabama, they have a shot. That's still a very talented roster. And led by a head coach who's had one of his teams in the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 years. Well, they didn't deserve it. Yeah, they won't deserve it this year. They didn't deserve it last year. Still got in.
I think as of right now, I think I'm going to buy this. At the time, I didn't have Alabama projected as a playoff team either. There's some things I can swing in there. I'm tempted to hold it because I don't know who their quarterback is. But I think regardless of who wins the job between Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, that's not going to answer my questions about Alabama being more disciplined on defense and their willingness to run the football. And so I think for those reasons, I'm going to buy it for now. I think that's going to come back to bite Alabama. The one thing I will say, and I'm probably giving them too much faith, but I think if it comes down to where Alabama's on the bubble again, I don't know if the committee is just going to put them in like they did this past season, so they can have some, I guess, protection against saying that there's just a clear bias towards Alabama. They didn't get in 2024. They kind of forced them in 25. If they're on the bubble again, I don't know if they just put them in again in 2026.
Would you agree with this statement, Trev? It depends on who the other bubble teams are.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the other bubble teams are Iowa State, BYU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, one of those type of teams, and if it's a, let's say an underdog Big Ten team, an ACC team, then I think you still see Alabama in. If it's Alabama at 9-3, battling for that last spot, or 10-2 against LSU, Ole Miss, some other SEC team or brand team, if it's Ohio State that's battling for that last spot, because let's say Ohio State loses to Texas and loses one other, maybe Ohio State's 9-3. There's a world in which Ohio State's 9-3 and deserving of a playoff berth. It's like the argument we had with Georgia 2 years ago, Trev. Remember when we said that? Like, look, guys, there's a world where Georgia at 9-3 has a better resume than a bunch of 10 and 11 win teams. Yeah. Because even with 3 losses, they're going to have more top 15 wins than anybody else in the country because of just how crazy their schedule is. LSU has a schedule like that this year, where there's a world in which you could argue if LSU's 9-3, if their 3 losses are competitive, they may have more top 20 wins than anybody outside of the top 2 or 3, maybe. So it just depends on who they're going against as to who we have them in. So if it's like an LSU, if it's like who beat Alabama, let's say, but Alabama's got a better record. Let's say Alabama's 10-2, but it was an ugly 10-2, and LSU smacked them, but LSU's 9-3 because their schedule's insane. Then maybe LSU gets in. Or if it's against an Ohio State team that's 9-3 with a crazy schedule, then they might get in. But if it's not against a blue blood like that, then I do think Alabama will get in. But I think the way this season is going to play out, it's most likely going to be another comparable brand that they'd be going against. And that's where I agree with you, Trev. They may not get the same benefit of the doubt this year against another blue blood like a Notre Dame that they got last year.
For sure.
Because then it becomes way too obvious. Because do we really want to put this team in there again and once again get smacked in the mouth?
Right.
I don't think so.
My prediction for how that's going to go, I think Alabama's going to be 9-2 going into their home game in the Iron Bowl against Auburn, and I'm still sticking with my prediction of the upset. And it'll be one of those where it's like win and you're in. If not, we'll see what the committee does, and I think they dropped Auburn.
Trev is riding that, by the way. Trev is riding that Alabama-Auburn upset for a long way. We're going to have a show later this summer. We predict the top 5 upsets. Y'all know one that's going to be on there. Sure. There's going to be one that's definitely going to be on there, and it's Alabama-Auburn. Trev is riding that one hard, and I love the consistency. And you know what? I don't disagree with you, Trev. I don't. I'd feel better if it was actually in Auburn.
Same.
Yeah,
same. We got the buy, sell, hold here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And we have our guy D-Troll Hunter kicking us off here in the next part. Buy, sell, hold. Steve Sarkisian's comments that his second stringers would win the Big 12 and beat Texas Tech.
I sell them in any way possible that you can sell them. It was a childish remark. It's a dumb remark. And it was one entirely based on Steve Sarkisian assuming that none of us have a memory span that goes beyond 3 years. And we're going to forget that his first 2 years, they went what? What were they? 12 and 15 his first 2 years or something, like 12 and 13 or 13 and 12 or something. What was his? Hold on, let me just look it up instead of trying to guess. They went 5-7 his first year, I believe, and then 8-5 his next year. So, were they 13 and 12? Is that what his record was? Let me pull it up here real quick. Yeah, he went 13 and 12 in his first 2 years and went 9-9 in the Big 12. I mean, he literally had a 17 and 10 record in 3 years in the Big 12. I mean, dude lost to Kansas. So it was a stupid remark, honestly, and just petty and unnecessary. And I'm all for taking shots at Texas Tech for the way they've conducted themselves, but it was an unnecessary, stupid comment from a coach who, like, dude, you need to worry about learning how to beat Florida. because you just got smacked in the mouth this past year by a 4-8 Florida team. You can miss me with that, tough guy talk right now, right? Like, you get bullied in the trenches by every team that you play that's got any physicality. Why don't you try to fix that problem first? And then you can talk about whether or not your second stringers would beat Texas Tech. Because your first stringers got beat by Florida last year, who went 4-8 and had they already fired their coach, or they were on the verge of firing their coach? I can't remember which one it was. But it's embarrassing either way. It's stupid, Trev. His first year there, they lost to Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State beat them by 23. They lost at home to Kansas. He has a loss on his resume to West Virginia. He has a loss on his resume. I already mentioned Oklahoma State, right? He has a loss on his resume to TCU. He has 2 losses to Oklahoma State. Texas Tech beat them in 2022. Should also mention that Texas Tech only went 8-5 that year. Joey McGuire was the coach of that team. Dude, you beat Iowa State by 3 that year. So, let's not pretend like you're this amazing, wonderful coach, just because you had one good year in the Big 12, which, by the way, you needed overtime to beat Kansas State. You beat TCU by 3. Great. You beat a bad Texas Tech team by 50. Wonderful. You're 1-1 against Joey McGuire. You're 1-2 in your career against Mike Gundy in your Big 12 tenure. So pipe down, dude. Grow up. Seriously, I don't know what his deal is this offseason, but Steve, dude, worry about you. Just another reminder, Trev, of why I'm very thankful that Notre Dame's head coach is Marcus Freeman. As a Notre Dame fan, as a lover of college football, I have so much more respect for him. As I said before, do I agree with all the things they do, how they access for us, blah, blah? No, that's more of a business standpoint. That bothers me. But as a fan of Notre Dame, it's like, man, this guy conducts himself with way more class than so many other people. It's like Kurt Cignetti's braggadocious. So what? He talks about his team. He's not out there taking shots at other teams other than we beat a top 25 teams. He didn't list all the top 25 teams they beat. You're now the calm guy, and it's these other childish head coaches that are just saying these dumb things. This social media era has just really gotten annoying to me because it's all done for recruiting. Oh, look what our coach said. Our coach is cool. Stupid.
Yeah, I'm selling this as well. Agree with everything that you said. It's also wildly disrespectful to a lot of the first teamers in the Big 12.
100%.
Like that is
a league where you had a 9-9 record in 3 years. I just want to remind people of that.
100%.
You're a 500 coach in your career against the Big 12 when you were in the Big 12 at Texas.
Yeah, with your first stringers, you didn't make the playoffs last year. Texas Tech with their first stringers did, and BYU had more of an argument to be in the playoffs last year than what Texas did. Another team from the Big 12.
Do we not need to remind him that he blew a 17-0 lead against the Big 12 champ and needed overtime to beat the Big 12 champ the year before in the playoffs? Do we need to remind him of that? Apparently we do. So, and then what does that say about your team a couple years ago? Are you really throwing your team from a couple years ago under the bus now?
Right.
They weren't good enough. Your first teamers barely beat Arizona State, but now all of a sudden you're so good. Come on, dude. Grow up.
Another one from D-Troll Hunter. Georgia Tech's schedule makes them a fringe playoff and ACC title contender despite losing Haynes King and Buster Faulkner.
I'm going to sell that one, Trev. I am. Here's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to their start. Can you go 2-0 against Colorado and Tennessee? If you go 1-1 again those 2 games, it's going to be tough. And even then, I still don't see it. I don't think their schedule. I get the sense. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trev, because sometimes I misread questions. I get the sense here that he views their schedule as being maybe a little softer.
Yeah.
But you're out of conference this year. Hey, say whatever you want about Georgia Tech, but I will never, ever question Georgia Tech's willingness to play a tough schedule. This is their non-conference schedule this year, Trev. Colorado, Tennessee, and Georgia. Colorado's not good. They were good when they scheduled them. You know what I mean? And then Tennessee, that's a challenge. But let's just say they go 2-0 in those games. They've got to play at Stanford, should be a win, but Stanford's been a tough game for ACC teams out at Stanford. They have Duke at home, at Virginia Tech, home against Boston College, at Pitt, home against Louisville, at Clemson, home against Wake Forest, at Georgia. I think they lose at least one of their home games this year. They'll lose to one of Tennessee, Duke, Louisville. They'll lose to one of those. They're going to get beat at Clemson. They're going to get beat at Georgia. That right there makes them 9-3. And so then you can say, well, they only have 2 conference losses. Well, that's assuming they also beat Virginia Tech on the road and also beat Pitt on the road. I think they lose one of those 2 games. I don't see a world in which they're better than 8-4 this year and then 3 losses in the conference. Now, could that mean that they still make the ACC title? Maybe. I guess maybe, but that's assuming everything goes right and they don't lose a game that they're not supposed to win or they're not supposed to lose. Because they've been a team that has had some losses the last couple of years, Trev, where you're like, how did they lose that game? How in the world did they lose that game? Like the Pitt at home last year. They got smacked by Pitt at home and should have lost to Boston College. Let's be honest. They were a lot closer to finishing that last year on a 5-game losing streak than they were to turn that around. They went 1-4 down the stretch. They were very lucky to beat Boston College.
They also should have lost to Wake Forest.
Should have lost to Wake Forest. Should have lost to Clemson. And if Colorado doesn't they tried to give that game to Colorado, and Colorado was like, no, we don't want it. It was like a game of hot potato. Their record was – what's funny is they were better than their 7-6 record the year before, complete opposite last year. They weren't as good as their record last year.
Without a doubt. I'm with you completely. I am selling this, and I'll go as far to say I think Georgia Tech is closer to being not bowl eligible than what I think they are being a playoff contender, in my opinion. I like their head coach. I do. I just question the overall talent on their roster. I think they got rated by the portal and by the draft. And I think their schedule this year is very sneakily difficult. I mean, even their in-conference schedule. I mean, Stanford only lost 2 home games last year, one of them to Notre Dame. I mean, outside of that, Stanford had a pretty good home record, including beating Cal at home at the end of the year. They beat Florida State at home by a touchdown.
The year before that, they beat Louisville at home.
Yep, sure did. I mean, they have Duke at home. They just got done playing for the conference title. Now I know that they don't have Cooper Burkhardt or Darian Mentz anymore. They get Virginia Tech on the road year 1 with James Franklin. They get Pitt on the road. Then their November slate is a gauntlet. I mean, they have Louisville at home, Clemson on the road, Wake Forest at home on senior day, and then Georgia on the road, all in November without a single bye week. Mm-hmm. I mean, Georgia Tech. Now, I'll say this to your point, though, D-Troll. If they do have a really good record against that schedule, which I think is more difficult than what some may be giving it credit for, I think Georgia Tech would earn the right to be an ACC title contender at that point in time. I just don't see it happening, so I'm going to sell it.
He might be advocating that they have a shot to get in because their schedule's harder. I guess that could be, like their schedule is hard. So they at 9-3 or 10-2 would get a lot more love because of how good their schedule is. And that's true. If they're 10-2 against that schedule, they have a great case to be an at-large playoff team.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yep. Agreed.
Just don't think they're going to go have any chance. I don't think they have a chance in heck of going 10-2 against that schedule. That's like saying last year Wisconsin had a great shot based on how tough their schedule was, but they had no chance of navigating that schedule.
100%.
So that's kind of how I look at it.
And by so hold, BYU has been the better program over the past 5 seasons compared to USC.
I don't even think that is close.
No.
I mean, last 5 years, USC has had 1 season of 10 or more wins, Trev. I mean, look, it's a little difficult to just compare numbers because for 2 of the years, BYU was in an independent. But even in 2021, when they were an independent, they beat Arizona, they beat Utah, they beat Arizona State. I remember us having this conversation, and they beat USC. They went 4-1 in 2021 against Power 4 teams. Beat Arizona, as I said, by 8, beat Utah by 9, beat Arizona State by 10, beat USC on the road by 4, and then lost to Baylor by 14. And they also lost that year to Boise State in the regular season. And then, so again, that's a primarily Power 4 schedule. Then you get to the next year, they were down the next year, 5-7, or it's because if we're looking at the last 5 years, you have to look at it, and it's actually that 22 they went 8-5, so 21 they went 10-3, finished in the top 25, finished 19th. 8-5 in 2022, their last year as an FBS independent. 23 they went 5-7, obviously down year for them, unranked. And then in 24 in the Big 12 they went 11-2 with a win over SMU, a road win over SMU as a playoff team. And then last year they went 12-1 and 12-2 and finished 11th. So last 2 years they've ranked 11th and 13th. And here's the other thing too, Trev. In the last 2 years, BYU has played quality out of conference opponents, and their only losses have been in conference the last couple of years. Like I said, they beat SMU 2 years ago when SMU went to the playoff game. Their losses have all been in conference losses. And then so over the last 5 years, they're 46-19. In that same stretch, USC is 42-26 and 0-1 against BYU. In the last 5 years, they've had 1 year with more than 9 wins. BYU has 3 years like that. In the last 5 years, BYU has finished the season ranked 3 times. USC's only finished their year ranked twice. BYU in that stretch has had 3 finishes of 13 or better. They finished 11th, 11th, and 13th. USC's only had 1 year of over 20, and their highest ranking was 12. So and again, in that stretch, they played each other once. In LA, BYU beat them. Yeah, but for part of that, BYU's an independent. Yeah, and when they were an independent, they beat USC on the road. So there's literally no metric that you can use to say that USC's been a better program in the last 5 years.
No, the only argument that USC has is they had a Heisman winner in 2022. That's it.
That's still finished ranked lower than BYU's best 2 years in that stretch.
Yep, 100%. I mean, BYU and Kalani Sitake the last 2 seasons are 23-4. USC could go undefeated this regular season and still not be at 23-4. Like it's just there's no comparison. There's no competition.
Yep.
You know, like that's how's the saying go? You can't compete when you don't compare. Like that's how USC is to BYU.
USC, if you take their last 2, like to your point, Trev, you're saying last 2 years they've lost way more than 4. For USC to match, like for their 25-26 to match what BYU did in 24 and 25. So you made your point. I'm not counting your point. I'm adding on to your point. For BYU to match what BYU did the last 2 years, for USC to match what BYU did the last 2 years, if you take their 25-26, they'd have to they'd have to go undefeated, win the Big Ten championship, and then win a quarterfinal playoff game to simply match what BYU has done the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's not happening. Not happening.
Yeah.
So, yes, they've been I don't even think this has actually been one of the easier buys we've had so far.
Agreed. Some more from D-Troll Hunter. Buy, sell, hold. Mike Gundy will never coach in college again.
I buy that. I think he's at the point now where he doesn't like the way it's going. If things change again, I'll say this. If Mike Gundy coaches again in college, I'll bet you $20 it's not at the FBS level.
Mm.
But a guy like him, he's made a ton of money. You know, he had great success. He was at a place for a long time. He doesn't like the direction it's going. I could see him being happy with what he's doing. I could see Mike Gundy getting hired by what's that league that's hired a bunch of former college coaches, like older retired guys, like Skip Holtz has done it and Bob Stoops did it. Is it the USFL or UFL or
it's either the UFL
the
Birmingham
or the Stallions and all that stuff. Like a lot of those coaches that are just like they're retired. They don't want to do the other stuff. They don't want to coach the NFL. UFL. They don't want to coach college anymore. Hey, this is fun. You know what I mean? Like you get a coach who's kind of pros. You're hoping these guys hopefully get to the point where they can then live their NFL dreams. You don't have to worry about recruiting and all that. I think if he were to coach, it'd be something like that again. But I don't see him coaching in college again.
I think Kevin Sumlin's actually coaching that league too.
That's hilarious.
The old Texas A&M coach, yeah. Speaking of old Texas A&M coaches, buy, sell, hold, Jimbo Fisher will be hired this offseason.
Sell.
Agreed. Then buy, sell, hold. LSU is off to a disappointing recruiting start under Lane Kiffin and is an early red flag with his continued portal-based model.
Sell. They're not doing a lot right now in high school recruiting because they're not trying to do a lot in high school recruiting. Now they are probably going to have some misses that, early on, but Just because a kid commits to a school other than LSU now doesn't mean that LSU won't go buy that player later. Or if LSU has a great year, they won't be able to flip that kid later. So they've made it very clear with public statements that they're going to be very portal focused early on to rebuild that roster. So I don't agree that it's been disappointing so far. I would say incomplete. I'd say it's a little too early to say it's disappointing. I'm not trying to say it's been successful. I'm simply saying I don't think that they're like, oh my gosh, they haven't gotten any kids. What's going on? I'm just not there yet because I don't think they're trying to land an elite high school class. You could disagree with that, and I do disagree with that. When you coach in Louisiana, you go get the best high school kids you can and then still go to the portal. But their thought process is we don't have, an unending cash reserve. So we're going to use that money to load up on the portal the next couple of years and then go the high school route. So we'll see if it works or not, but I don't know that it's a red flag. I think it's a strategy. It's worked for some teams and hasn't worked for others. Let's see how it does for them. But
Agreed.
it's a proven strategy if you can execute it correctly.
Another one from D-Troll Hunter. Buy, sell, hold. One of these programs moves on from their head coach this offseason in shocking fashion. Tennessee, North Carolina, USC, a.k.a. the University of Scared Children. Josh Heupel is an overrated head coach.
So I'm going to buy that one of those teams will move on from their coach. I don't know about the shocking fashion part. I don't know what that would be like. Just does that mean like in season? Possible. I'll buy that. And I'm all about the USC shade. So go for it. University of Scared Children, that tracks. I do believe that Josh Heupel's a bit of an overrated head coach. I think Josh Heupel's a really good offensive mind. But part of being a great head coach is that you can adjust to your team, your roster. And the fact that he's so reliant on a veteran quarterback to be successful tells me that he doesn't have the ability to adjust. His system works very narrowly. And I don't think that's a great way of going about it. If his former offensive coordinator wins early at Auburn, Alex Golesh was the OC on that really good, it was a 22 Tennessee team that had that great offense. Alex Golesh was the OC. You haven't really been great on offense since he left. If he comes into the SEC, takes over to Auburn, and does well this first 2 years, it's going to be a really big black eye for Josh Heupel if he can't win quickly. I'm just saying it right now. So, yeah, I do think as of right now, you have to say he's an overrated head coach. Really good offensive mind, but overrated head coach. Absolutely.
Agree about Josh Heupel. I'm actually going to sell this, but in that I think that one of these head coaches is going to leave and move on from their program, not the other way around. I think Lincoln Riley he doesn't have the chops for the job, and I have to believe that. I think he's a coward, but I think he knows he doesn't have the chops to be at a place like USC. And after they've done everything to damage the Notre Dame rivalry, they're still not going to make the playoffs this year. And I think he's going to really start to garner interest from the NFL as an offensive mind. I think he leaves USC before USC gets the chops to fire him. From D-Troll Hunter, buy, sell, hold. The rumor of BYU possibly bumping another P4 school from their out-of-conference schedule going forward to get this Notre Dame series extended long-term.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that that's official. I've heard people say that that's going on. I don't know that that's true or not. I buy that. We've talked about this before, Trev. This is everybody else kind of coming around to something you and I have been saying since, what would it be? When did that happen? January? December, yeah. Actually. Wasn't it December?
It was, yes.
Yeah, because it was when I was on my trip to Holland. Because I remember Angie and I were at breakfast that morning. I remember that now. And it was when we were up in Michigan. So I believe that was December. Yeah, we've been talking about how we'd like to see, Trevor especially has been very vocal about how much he'd love to see Notre Dame and BYU schedule a long-term rivalry. And then I wrote an article about it also. So yeah, I would buy this as a possibility. I'd have no problem with that. Would actually embrace that. I'm like, good, do it. Do it.
100%. Then the fact that Oregon is replacing both coordinators is an underrated storyline coming into 2026.
I buy that that's an underrated storyline. Yes, I do. I have two schools of thought on this, Trev. I'm curious what you think about this. I don't think people are talking enough about having to replace Tosh and Will Stein. I don't think it's being discussed enough, especially Will Stein, because you did a great job replacing Kenny Dillingham with Will Stein. but you went outside your program to do that. They brought in Will Stein from the outside, correct? Will Stein, I don't believe, was working with Kenny Dillingham. I'm going to look that up real quick, but I'm pretty sure that they brought Will Stein in from the outside. Yes, he was at UTSA. You brought him in from the high school or from UTSA to Oregon after Kenny Dillingham left. But when he left, they promoted from within. And I don't know how that's going to go. I think that's an even bigger question mark than Tosh, because I don't think Oregon was great on defense. I don't think they were coached great on defense. So I actually think there's a chance that, you'll see Dan Lanning maybe take a little bit more of a
like hands-on.
Yeah. Or he's not going to obviously take over the defense, but maybe have more of a hands-on role. But I mean, he hired from, I believe he hired from within as well on defense. Yeah, he did. Chris Hampton has been co-D coordinator the last 2 years, so that makes a little bit more sense to go there. But I would imagine if he's a smart coach, he's going to do what a good defensive-minded head coach should do, which is kind of help that transition period with sort of the new coordinator that you have. But I think that actually is going to end up maybe paying off if he does that. We'll see. But yeah, the Will Stein replacement is a problem. The other side of the coin is if you're going to have to replace two coordinators, they've got the perfect roster for it because they have so many guys coming back. They're such a veteran team in a lot of ways. Quarterback coming back, running backs are coming back. Now, their running backs are still young, but they've played a lot of football. Young receivers, but they've played a lot of football. Young DBs, but they've played a lot of football. Your entire starting D-line comes back. Your entire secondary outside of Dylan Theineman comes back. You replace him with a transfer that you and I would agree is a pretty darn good football player. You lose a really good linebacker, but you've got a lot of guys that have played that are coming back. This is a pretty experienced team outside of the offensive line. So I think that should help with the transition a little bit and could potentially, if they're not good, mask some of the issues that won't get exposed till down the road. But it could also be something that holds them back. And then against the schedule they have, it could be enough to where instead of being 11-1, then maybe they're 9-3 or 10-2. It's possible. But I just think Oregon's roster is such that they're just going to out-talent some people like they did 2 years ago. That's what I'm kind of leaning towards with them. That's a very talented roster.
Yeah.
It's almost like,
it is.
Can you really mess that one up? Like that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Well, I think in-house hires were smart for Dan Lanning with the roster that they have now. There was a reason why a lot of us Notre Dame fans wanted Mike Mickens to be promoted from within last year. A lot of continuity on that coaching staff, talented roster. You run the risk of bringing in an outside guy of like, okay, does he come in? It's like my way or the highway. Do they have to learn a completely new system? And depending on your coordinator, unlearn what they've learned over the last couple seasons. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I don't know if Oregon's going to run that risk, but I do buy that this is an underrated storyline. I feel like a lot of people are brushing over the fact that Oregon is having to replace an offensive coordinator.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah. I mean, last year I felt like all people talked about was Notre Dame replacing Al Golden and Ohio State replacing their defensive coordinator. That went to Penn State. I feel like that's all anybody talked about.
Yep.
This year with Oregon, people are very quick to, hey, they're one of the favorites on FanDuel to win the national title. They're going to go and they're going to win the Big Ten and they're going to go do all these things, but nobody talks about their coordinator things. I'm with that. Some more from D-Troll Hunter, Biso Holdenius Williams. Non-Notre Dame comp is Austin Eckler.
I'll let you have that one. I'm not familiar with what Austin Eckler did in college.
Yeah, from what he did in college, I'm
That's
also
the
not
Chargers running back, right?
Yeah, now
he's on a lot of NFL.
Yeah, now he's on the Commanders. To a degree, yeah, pass catching ability is similar. Their builds are somewhat similar. I think Austin Eckler is a little bit more shifty than Aeneas, whereas Aeneas is a very much one cut and go back. Non-Notre Dame comp, I'd have to sit and think about it for a while. But I'll buy it from the pass catching ability and the ability to be a dual threat weapon out of the backfield. I think that's a fair one. And then Will Muschamp is a downgraded defensive coordinator for Texas.
I'm going to hold this one because here's the thing. I don't love Will Muschamp as a coach, but I do think he's a better D coordinator than he is as a head coach. The thing is, Pete Kwiatkowski got scapegoated a little bit the last couple of years. I mean, they were who they were in 2024 because of the defense. when I look at Muschamp, I do think he knows how to coach defense. Somebody in the chat says, why do I not like him? Because I think he's a complete a-hole. I think his antics of so over the top, or like if a player was ever caught screaming at another person like that, we'd be like, what an immature dude. What did it? He's one of those old school football coaches that has no ability to control his emotions. Now, maybe as he's been off the field, he's kind of recalibrated a little bit. And maybe he won't be as obnoxiously over the top, like, dude, you've lost your cool. How can you expect your team not to lose their cool when you're losing your cool? Maybe he's addressed some of that. I don't know. But I just look, Will Muschamp knows defense. I'm not going to say he doesn't know defense. I just think he's one of those guys, Trev, that I look at and say, I think he benefited from, he built his reputation on what? Being the D coordinator on Saban's team. And, then he goes to Texas and he's the D coordinator at Texas and he's the coach in waiting, and that becomes a big problem. And Texas's defense kind of underachieved, and it was because of Mac Brown got the blame, but nobody blamed Will Muschamp. And then he goes to Florida's head coach and he struggles, and he's the D coordinator at Auburn for a year, and and then he leaves there and and goes to South Carolina as a head coach. Doesn't do great there. He wasn't terrible at South Carolina's head coach. At least at first he was okay. His last 2 years, they were terrible. And then he keeps getting gigs, and it's like, what has he done since his time with Saban to justify being that guy? I don't get it. Chris Ash before being hired at Notre Dame had a good defense more recently than Will Muschamp in college. If you go back to his 2015 team. I mean, Auburn in 2016, they went 7-6. They weren't even that good, and gave up 45 points, 54 points, 27 points, 34 points, 29 points. It's like, what exactly did he do that made us warrant that he's still this great defensive mind? When has Will Muschamp had a great defense outside of when he was coaching with Nick Saban? Like, I'm still waiting on someone to explain that to me. So I don't see a guy that's great. I mean, he was co-D coordinator at Georgia in 22 and 23, and then became an analyst for 2 years. I don't know why. Maybe needed to step away. I don't know the backstory there. But I don't think he's a great D coordinator. I don't think there's a track record of being a great defensive coordinator. But I also think he's an aggressive coach, and I think that Texas needs a coach that's going to be aggressive. And that was my issue with Pete Kwiatkowski, is what he did in 24 worked with that defense when you had a bunch of veteran NFL players. You had a Jahdae Barron and all those type of guys. Once you lost those guys, you kept trying to do the same thing. It wasn't as effective because you didn't have the players for it, and he couldn't adjust. And so that's kind of my issue there with that, Trev, is I don't think he's a great coach, but I think this year in 26 could be a great fit for what they need this year. Now, is it the long-term answer? Don't know. But I don't know. I've never been a big fan of his defenses. I think very overrated coach. And I just don't like it, the manner in which he conducts himself. Now, again, time away may have calmed him down a little bit, and he realizes, like, dude, I can't act like that anymore. Not in this era. Intensity's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mind a coach yelling. I was a yeller. I look back and have some regrets on how I wish I would have not yelled as much. But, like, Harry Hiestan's still my favorite O-line coach. There's plenty of coaches that are intense and yell. It's when you've lost your cool. And you're not just yelling. You're showing people up. You've gone over the top. You can't control yourself. And then you wonder why his teams are undisciplined. He's undisciplined. It's the same thing I say about Shane Beamer. When the head coach can't keep us cool, do you expect the players to? He does. He can lose his mind and act like an idiot, but if his players do it, then that's going to cause him to lose his mind and act like an idiot again. So I'm not a big fan of Will Muschamp. It has nothing to do with yelling. Yelling is fine. It's when you've lost your cool and you're no longer you're yelling, but you're no longer instructing. You're just embarrassing, and that's not teaching. Harry Heaton will MF you for 5 minutes, but in between those MFs is a whole lot of teaching, not just embarrassing you. That's the difference.
How about this one? The post-spring SEC meeting media day rankings: 1 Texas, 2 Georgia, 3 LSU, 4 Ole Miss, 5 A&M, 6 Alabama. I'm gonna ping pong this right back to you because I haven't dove too much into their post-spring media day rankings.
Well, is that what they did? I don't know that they came up with it, or if he's just giving his opinion. I think they're still doing. Let me just look this up here real quick. Media day rankings. Let's see if they've done this or not yet. Yeah, I don't know that the media has done their rankings yet. I think this is more of his opinion. So I would buy Texas at 1. I'm going to buy Georgia at 2. The rest of your list I sell because I have A&M 3 for right now because it's clearly those top 2 teams are the best. And then there's a lot of, boy, it could go a lot of different ways. I have Ole Miss a lot lower. Trev, I've been very much adamant about the fact that I don't think they're going to be as good this year. I would have A&M and LSU 3 and 4. Bama in that I would have A&M, LSU, and Bama kind of contending for 3 to 5, and I'd have Ole Miss 6 is where I would be. I'm okay with your 6, Trev, although I think, we've talked about this. I would be very curious to see, if Tennessee can get their quarterback situation figured out. I do think they have a shot to have a really good team this year. But they, of your 6. Now, here's a team that's missing that I would have as my 3 is Oklahoma. So, of your 6, I would even range it there. But I think you're not having Oklahoma on there is the one that I would strongly disagree with. Just my view.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'd go 1 Texas, 2 Georgia, 3 A&M, toss up between 4 through 6 between LSU, Alabama, and Oklahoma. I would not have Ole Miss in my top 6.
Agree.
Buy, sell, hold. Penn State, only because of their schedule, will contend for a playoff spot.
It's hard sell. I mean, look, here's the deal. We have to come to grips with the idea that Penn State doesn't have the same roster they had 2 years ago. And you say, well, their schedule's not great. I understand all that, but their roster's not great either, in my opinion. Here's the deal. Their schedule's soft. I understand that. I think there's 2 guaranteed losses on their schedule. Guaranteed they're going to lose to Michigan and Washington. I don't know that it's a given they can go to Evanston and beat Northwestern. I don't know it's a given they're going to go to Maryland and beat Maryland. I get their schedule is garbage. But I think 9-3 is the best they're going to do. But Penn State at 10-2, I don't know has them in the conversation to be in the playoffs. This is a worse schedule than what Indiana played 2 years ago. And Indiana was a road team at 11-1. I don't think Penn State's going to get the benefit of the doubt that people think they are. But, look, right now, Penn State at home against USC, unless Lincoln Riley just chokes again, which is possible, I think USC has a significantly better team than Penn State. They should be able to go on the road and beat Penn State. Will they? That we don't know. But they should. I don't think beating Maryland at Maryland's a given. The only thing that concerns me is by that point in time, maybe Maryland's kind of quit as a team. But if they haven't given up as a team, that's going to be a lot tougher game than people think it's going to be. So I don't think they're going to contend for a playoff spot. I'm going to sell that. But that schedule, Trev, this is a joke. I don't want to hear a freaking word about Notre Dame's schedule. And this is what pisses me off. Do you very often, when you look at the top 25 rankings, how often do they mention Penn State's having a soft schedule?
Almost never.
Right. But yet this is their schedule. Marshall, Temple, Buffalo, Wisconsin, Northwestern, USC, Michigan, Purdue, Washington, Minnesota, Rutgers, and Maryland. Notre Dame needs to join a conference so they can have that. Please.
Yeah, Penn State is going to be in no man's land this year, no matter which way you shake it out. They very well could be 9-3, and you could argue that they shouldn't even be ranked inside the top 25 at 9-3. 100%. Because who have they beaten? There is a world, and I'm not predicting this to happen because you would need some stuff to happen. There's a world where they could play 12 unranked opponents when the season is all said and done. I don't think it's a given that Michigan will be ranked. I think that they will, but they're not so much of a shoe. It's they'll be 11th or 12th. And with USC, who the heck knows? This is going to be the least talented receiving core that Lincoln Riley has had from top to bottom since he's gotten to USC.
From
I
a
mean,
talent plus experience standpoint, I would agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Their
I
freshman
watched.
class is really good, but you're now banking on a bunch of freshmen to carry your team to a playoff berth.
Yeah,
You don't have
100%.
Jeremiah Smith, bro.
Yeah, and I watched him go 7-6 with a Heisman-winning quarterback.
And a
under
Bolitnik, and they went 9-4 last year with a Bolitnikoff winner and another draftable player.
Like it's not a given that USC is going to be ranked either. So there's a world where Penn State plays one or none ranked opponents, and they could be 9-3 and outside of the top 25 because they're just like they just literally haven't done anything. They might as well have played 12 MAC schools. I mean, I think that's crazy. But no, I'm selling this. Penn State will not contend for a playoff spot this year. And then buy, sell, hold. Colorado is more likely to fire Deion Sanders after the season than he is to medically retire.
Sell. I think if they were going to fire him, I think the only way they fire him is if Deion refuses to walk away.
Yeah.
I think what they would do is they would give him the opportunity to say, hey, look, his health is just too hard, and let him walk away. From what I'm told, they respect and like Deion a lot. So I think if they had to make a move, I think they'd give him the opportunity to walk away. The only way he wouldn't do that, in my opinion, is that they would fire him is if he just like, screw it. No, I don't want to leave. Yeah.
Yeah. The only way I see them firing Deion is either that scenario or if he does something that warrants firing, not like his overall record. Like if he starts being, which is just not, I don't think in his character as a head coach. I think he's done enough for that program where they would give him his due respect to give him the opportunity to walk away.
And he's still Deion. He to me, I think your point is great, Trev. Unless he does something that warrants it, something off the field that warrants it, or some sort of insane conduct on the field that warrants it, I think they give him the option to walk away. But if he says, no, I'm not leaving, then they'll fire.
100%. Oh, got a food one in here from D-Troll. Buy one, sell one, hold one, I'm assuming. Plain hot dog, plain burger with no cheese, or plain chicken sandwich, minimal seasoning.
Of those things, a plain hot dog is carries the day for me. I love burgers, Trev, but here's the funny thing is I love ground beef, but in the form of a burger, like I could eat a bowl of seasoned ground beef. And part of the thing I'm doing with my new diet is one of the things I'm doing is I'm not eating a lot of processed carbs or hardly any processed carbs. So like instead of having like a taco or like a tortilla, I just have a taco seasoned, fajita seasoned ground beef, and I put cheese and I put lettuce into the bowl and have it as a bowl, right? I can do that. I can't just eat plain hamburgers. I don't love that as much. I like a burger more with seasoning. I think a hot dog, if it's a good hot dog, has a lot more natural flavor by itself without a lot of seasoning than just a hamburger. Even smash burgers, I think, are the closest I could get to that because of just the way they're cooked. There's just a lot more of the flavor that comes from the fat. But a plain chicken sandwich with minimal seasoning is definitely, like, chicken just by itself is not the greatest thing in the world, in my opinion. Chicken needs seasoning. Now, the thing I love about chicken, Trevor, is if you season it right, it turns into the flavor of chicken goes, like, to me, gets accented more by seasoning than the just plain flavor of a beef or a hot dog. I think you can just completely transform the flavor profile of chicken if you do it right. But just like plain chicken with minimal seasoning, I don't love. I just don't. A plain hot dog, if it's a good hot dog, can carry the day without. Actually, I don't put anything on hot dogs. I eat plain hot dogs unless it's I'll put like a coney dog or something like that, Trev. But like I don't put mustard or ketchup or relish or onions or anything like that. You see me at Notre Dame games, I'll just have a plain hot dog. If it's a good hot dog, it can much better by itself.
Yeah, the floor of a plain hot dog is significantly higher than like chicken with no seasoning or a plain burger, especially with no cheese. Mm-hmm. Also, unless you're lactose intolerant, if you eat burgers without cheese, I think that's wild. Like, I think that is a crazy move. That's just my own personal opinion.
And for me, Trev, it's not even that a burger is so plain tasting that you need cheese. It's just more of there's very few things better than the combination of ground beef and cheese. It's just such a great combination. Why would you not want it?
Yeah.
It's kind of where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah, I would also need some context here. Plain chicken sandwich, is it breaded or is it just a piece of grilled chicken with like salt and pepper? If we're talking minimal seasoning. Like if it's when I think of a chicken sandwich, I always assume that there's breading on it. Because if there is, I'm taking the chicken sandwich. If it's just a chicken breast with
Yeah,
no breading,
but
then
if there's minimal seasoning, then that would also mean minimal seasoning in the breading,
no, that's fair. No,
like
that's
which I
fair.
still think would not taste very good.
I think that would make it more competitive with a plain hot dog.
Agree. Agree.
Like that's
Agree.
kind of how I'm looking at it. So if it's breaded, I'll probably buy chicken sandwich, hold plain hot dog, and then sell the plain burger. But if it's not, and it's just a piece of chicken breast with salt and pepper, then I'm buying the plain hot dog, holding the chicken sandwich, and selling the plain burger.
Somebody said, "How about shredded chicken?" Though same thing. Shredded chicken is still just chicken if it hasn't been seasoned. That's the whole thing in this conversation is the minimal seasoning thing. So I'm just putting like a little bit of salt, pepper on it.
Right.
No. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Trev.
And then pizza, meat lovers pizza, veggie pizza, or supreme pizza.
I'll buy meat lovers pizza and I'm selling everything else because I don't like enough. The only vegetable I'll have on a pizza is if you count mushrooms as a vegetable. Some people do, some people don't. Some people say, it's a fungi, it's not a vegetable, whatever. I count it as a vegetable, but that's the only one. I could live with onions on a pizza. If you bought pizzas, Trev, and I'm hungry and there's pepperoni, mushrooms, and onions on it, I'll eat it. If there's cheese and onions on it, I'll eat it. I don't love it, but I'll eat it. Supreme, I can't do. There's too much stuff on there. My wife and I get pizzas in Goshen. Have you ever been to Venturi's in Goshen? Mm-hmm. It's excellent, by the way. They import their bread from Italy at a very light. Like my wife can't eat gluten anymore since her surgery, and her friend who has celiacs will eat there. And she's been to Italy and she'll eat in Italy. But so we went there and Angela had no issues from it, which is great. But yeah, they import their bread from it. Just such a softer, just more airy, just like it just didn't feel processed. It was great. I had just cheese pizza. I could eat a cheese pizza. I get pepperoni mushroom when I have a pizza on my own, but I'm not. You go beyond two toppings, and I'm like, okay, you're overdoing it on that pizza. Personally, for me, my flavor profile. So that's why I would sell both of the other. I couldn't even hold one of those.
Yeah, I'm going buy meat lovers pizza, hold supreme, sell veggie pizza. I'm a big believer that I think all pizza should have meat unless you're just going to go something simple like a cheese pizza where like the topping is cheese. Like I just think that a pizza should always have meat on it. Personal preference. So
that's the thing. It's personal preference. Like I love cheese on a pizza. I don't like the margarita pizzas because it's not enough cheese.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's going to need some. It's just like you said, personal preference. I'm someone who likes fewer toppings on a pizza.
And then buy, sell, hold these fajita meats: beef, steak, or shrimp.
So I'm gonna buy steak. I'm gonna hold beef, and I'm gonna sell shrimp. I think shrimp is great on a fajita when it's with something else. I don't love a shrimp fajita by just a shrimp fajita. I like shrimp on a chicken fajita or a steak fajita. That's where I'm at, Trev. So buy steak, hold beef. I like both of those a lot. Sell shrimp.
I would buy. Okay, this might just come from my lack of understanding. Like, what's the difference between a steak fajita and a beef fajita?
Ground beef versus steak strips.
Fair. I would personally, I would replace the beef with chicken and have it steak, chicken, or shrimp. That's just my read on it. But either way, I'm buying steak. Whenever steak is a part of something that I could potentially buy, I'm buying steak.
Now, I have seen some people call it beef fajita as a shredded beef. And then the difference is just a different cut of beef. So obviously, like the fajita may be flank and then the shredded beef is just a different type of beef. But my assumption would be that they're talking about ground beef. Makes sense. Either way, I'm with you, Trev. A steak fajita is still going to beat out whether it's a shredded beef or a ground beef. It's still going to beat it out.
Yeah, this is probably just how I eat it or how it's prepared. Whenever I have ground beef in something, like I would just always assume it's a taco, not a fajita. And I know the difference with fajitas is like seasoning and like peppers
how
and
you
onions,
wrap
which
it.
is not pepper. Yeah, exactly. But if I have ground beef in something that looks like a taco, I'm always just going to assume that it's a taco. not a
Yep.
fajita. So that's the only reason why I asked. But yeah, I'd buy steak, hold beef, sell shrimp, but it's close. I love shrimp. Love shrimp.
I just think on a fajita, shrimp is a better mix. It's better with it
Sure.
than it is as a standalone.
No, that's very fair. That's how I feel about like fried rices. Like I like getting house fried rice because it's like you get steak, chicken, and shrimp, sometimes pork. But like I'll never just get shrimp fried rice.
Yep, agree. When we go to Hanayori, same thing. I love getting the shrimp with the fried rice, but I also get the chicken and steak.
Yep.
It's a great complement to those other things.
Agreed.
Yep.
And then Salty has been slowly converting himself into an AI agent to live in the IB chat forever.
Sell. I love that. I can't do my guy Salty dirty like that, but I'll sell that. He's going to do it eventually, but he just hasn't done it yet. That's why I'm selling that.
We're still rolling here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the buy sell hold going on today, and Sunlit Night is getting us kicked off here. After the regular season, Notre Dame's schedule will look better by virtue of the fact that we go 12-0 and give Miami, BYU, and SMU each their only loss.
I'm going to buy that as a possibility. I'm going to sell it in practicality because I do see a world in which one of those teams has a second loss. But I like this. I'm buying the spirit of the question. I think all three of those teams are going to be good football teams. Miami has to prove to us that, just like Notre Dame does to a degree, that they can avoid that bad loss, or the two bad losses, because they haven't done that yet. Now, this year, they got to have none and lose to a really good Notre Dame team. They got to prove that. But I think this Miami team's capable of proving that. SMU similar. I think SMU has to prove that they can avoid that bad loss and go 10-2. But I think it's certainly possible. I think BYU is the only team on there that has proven that they can go through a whole season and not have a bad loss. I would argue that in the last 2 years, especially last year, I mean, their only loss last year, Trev, was twice to a really good Texas Tech team. The only thing you could say is bad loss was the margin of victory. But the year before, they lost at Arizona State. They're only anything that you could consider a bad loss the last 2 years was losing to Kansas. But if you go back and look at Kansas, that was during a stretch in which Kansas beat Iowa State, BYU, and Colorado in back-to-back-to-back games. And the only game that was a one-score game was the BYU game. They beat Colorado by 16 and Iowa State by 9. And that was a very good Kansas team. People forget how good Kansas was in 24. Man, what are you talking about, Brian? They were 5-7. Yeah, they were 5-17 that beat a ranked BYU team, beat a ranked Colorado team, beat a ranked Iowa State team, only lost to K-State on the road by 2, blew out Houston, only lost on the road to Arizona State by 4, lost at West Virginia by 4, lost to a ranked UNLV team by 3, and lost at a ranked Illinois team by 6. Like, they were a really good 5-7 team. That's still a bad loss when you lose to them at home. That's the only bad loss they've had the last couple of years, Trev. Miami, Notre Dame's had more bad losses, or has had the same number of bad losses as far as, Northern Illinois, but Miami's had more. SMU's had more.
Yeah, this one's tough. Is it a possibility with some of their schedules? I think so, but at the end of the regular season, I would be remiss if I said that all three of these teams will go 11-1 with their only losses to Notre Dame. I would love to be wrong. I'm going to sell it. I think out of all of them, I think SMU is probably the team that I would put my money on to do that. Miami will be close, but Miami has to prove to me that they won't have one of their what the heck was that kind of losses, because they've had 2 of those, at least 2 in the last 2 seasons between 24 and 25. BYU potentially. But if I were to put money on it, I think if SMU is if they're able to beat Louisville on the road in September, I think there's a good chance that they run the table until they get to Notre Dame. Like, I think SMU would probably, if I had to put money on it, I'd put SMU. That's where I would be. And then of the 3 backup quarterbacks, buy one, sell one, hold one, the quarterback who can win us a title if Carr gets injured.
Oh, boy. I would buy Steve Angeli just because I think he's gritty enough and gamey enough to I mean, this is a kid that kind of willed a team to a state championship in 6A Florida football last year that had no business winning a state championship. I would hold Blake Hebert because I feel like Blake at least has the running ability to do some damage with the talent around him with the O-line, and then I'd sell Teddy Gerard because we haven't seen Teddy Gerard yet in the Notre Dame uniform. I have a hard time believing that a kid who's supposed to be a high school senior is going to be able to lead Notre Dame to a title this season. That's kind of where I'm at. And I don't think Teddy Gerard needs to be the backup quarterback in 26. We've talked about this. CJ Carr was never the backup quarterback in 2024. But the entire plan was building him to where he was going to be the guy in 25. They're two different things. I think there's this. Now, it could be the case that the backup is the guy who wins the job. No question. And I think, but you and I've always been clear. All that does is gives you who's the number 2 when the first practice starts in the spring. That's all it guarantees you, being the backup the previous season. I don't know a single person at Notre Dame that I have as a source that thought that Steve Angeli was going to be the starting quarterback when Riley Leonard left, even though they all advocated for why he needed to be the backup in 24.
Yeah, man. Big picture, I agree with your order, but practically speaking, I don't know if any of them could win a title this year if CJ goes down. They could. I mean, the oldest and most experienced guy in the room is Blake Hebert, who Gino Guidugli even went on record to say he's basically a true freshman this season as far as running Notre Dame's offense. Last year he was the scout team quarterback. And then you have Noah Grubbs, who has never played a snap of collegiate football, and then Teddy Gerard, who should still be a senior in high school. I mean, I think all of them at some point in their careers have the talent to do that. But this year specifically, if Carr goes down, I would be untruthful if I was like, yeah, that guy could, if I'm speaking practically. But big picture, I would say Brian's order. From JD, gosh, I might butcher this last name.
McKillen.
JD McKillen. Buy, sell, hold. CJ Carr will lead the nation in QBR.
Buy. I think he's number 2 in among returning quarterbacks. So I'll buy that.
Yep. Definite buy for me as well. And then Aeneas Williams will lead the running backs in receiving yards.
Buy.
Yep. Very much. And then by the middle of the season, one of the freshman running back will be in the games in the most crucial moments and will start games.
I'm going to sell that one for now. I think it's certainly possible, and I won't be shocked by it, but I'm not ready to go there right now. I think that in one breath, I want to give respect to how talented those freshman running backs are. And I'd probably feel a little bit different about this if Javion Osborne had been healthy in the spring and wasn't dealing with an injury. But him being out lessens the chances of that happening since both of them didn't get all that work. I'm just not ready to say that they're going to pass up Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, and Nolan James without injury. I think it would require some injuries for that to happen. So I'm going to sell that for now. Would it shock me, Trev? No. Am I predicting it? No. Not middle of the season.
Sure. We see that the same. I think for one of the true freshman running backs to start a game as of right now, somebody would have to be hurt. That's why I'm selling. I don't want anybody to be hurt. Yeah. Buy, sell, hold. Casey's Pizza is the best gas station pizza you can buy. If you haven't had Casey's Pizza, I recommend it, not because I drive a semi for them. Okay, well.
Do you have an opinion on this, Trev? Because I've never had Casey's Pizza.
No, I mean that, and it's gonna come off snarky, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible. If I'm looking to get pizza, I'm not gonna go to a gas station. Like, I won't.
I did when they had. I'm trying to remember the name of the place, but there was this pizza place that was like the restaurant was attached to the gas station on Douglas. Back a number of years ago. It has since been sold. It's now a Barnaby's, but their owner passed and it got sold. But that was the only one that I would say is,
yeah. If I will say this though, JD, I have heard other people say that Casey's Pizza is the best gas station pizza, so that I will tip my hat to you. Personal preference. If I'm going to do that though, if I want pizza, I probably won't go to a gas station. I also don't think there's a Casey's near me. unfortunately.
Yeah. By the way, whenever we say QBR or quarterback rating, we're not talking about the garbage ESPN rating, which takes into account quality of schedule, which basically overhypes everyone that plays in the SEC. We don't use that. That's a stupid rating. And the only reason some fans use it is because it hypes up the SEC. We're talking about passer rating that the NCAA uses, which did not have those quarterbacks higher than CJ Carr. He was a top 5 quarterback last year nationally, not even counting returners. So if you ever are wanting to disagree with us, that's fine. You can like QBR, but don't say, no, you're wrong. He was actually this, because we don't look at that number. It's a dumb number, and that's never what we mean. So don't correct me and say, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying this is a new person that said that. I'll never be referring to that, ever. So I don't look at ESPN stats. I think they're stupid unless it's like we're having to use them for team stuff. I don't ever use, because like they say in there, they adjust it for quality of schedule, which means what? We're going to overhype all the SEC teams, which is how you can get to a ranking that has Gunnar Stockton significantly ahead of CJ Carr in quarterback rating. So you can miss me with that QBR stuff. We don't ever mean that. It's passer rating. That's a quarterback rating. When you go to the NCAA stat by CJ Carr, it says rating. He's a quarterback. That's the quarterback rating. So that's what it means. It doesn't mean whatever dumb rating that ESPN comes up with. So we can now make sure we're on the same page on that moving forward. Don't ever correct me with that. QBR. Oh my God. All right. Well, I'm moving on. The Miami fans pissing me off today. Here we go. Let's move on.
Buy, sell, hold from Irish English. Fumble recoveries are mostly greater than 50% luck.
Greater than 50% luck? I'll buy that. I mean, you got to be in the right position. There's certain teams things you can teach, but a lot of it's just where the ball bounces and where it comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, like the hit that Don Schuler put on the running back from Georgia, if that ball doesn't go flying downfield and it just goes down, there's a much greater chance that Georgia recovers it than anything Notre Dame could do. So I'll buy that.
For sure. And then buy one, sell one, hold one for football training, back squat, cleans, or bench press.
I'll buy cleans, I'll hold back squat, and I'll sell bench press. I think bench press is something that is good for football player, but I've never been a huge fan of it, even for football training. As far as like this end all be all, simply because there's so many other things you can do to get the same result as a bench press. Well, there's not a lot of other things you can do that squats and cleans don't get you. The reason I like cleans is I think that's the best all-around workout.
Yeah.
I think cleans are shoulders, upper body, and lower body all in one, where squat is purely lower body and bench is purely upper body. As far as a football workout, cleans is, in my opinion, the best all-around workout, whether it's full clean or a hang clean. Like proper technique in a hang clean is still using your lower body.
Yeah, agreed. Bench press is also more like one position specific, kind of for the offensive line, partially D line too.
I'd put linebackers in there a little bit. Anybody that's got a block destruct with kind of getting this, get some value of it. But Trev, can't you do that with a million other different, things that don't involve a bench? That's my whole thing. But yeah, it's more position specific. Agree with you completely.
Yep, opposed to cleans or back squat. So we have the same order. From Tej, buy, sell, hold. Your favorite, quote, signature Notre Dame player celebrations between Jalen Smith's bowling ball, Jeremiah Love's hard hands, or Junior Tuialamaka's arm tee.
What's your thoughts on this, Trev? I think I know where I'm going to go with this one. I'm curious to hear what you think about this one.
Oh gosh, I'd probably buy Jeremiah Love's hard hands, hold Jalen Smith's bowling ball, and then sell Junior Tuialamaka's arm tee. It's probably where I would go.
I'd flip the first two, and we're close. They're very close. I liked Jalen Smith. It's also more it's older, I think that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's a little bit older. I'm more familiar with it. It was more of an in the moment thing, where Jeremiah Love's is kind of at the end of an entire series and you don't always see it. Jalen's you always see. That was kind of my thing, but they're both great. They're both great. Can I just say this? You know what I do like about the other two compared to Jalen's is with Jalen's, it was just him. Whereas the others, like the whole team kind of get, like you see the offensive players doing the love thing. You'll see I still remember Xavier Watts when Junior had that fumble recovery going, like, you know what I mean? Like it did. So that was the one thing that goes in the favor of those other two, where Jalen's, you didn't see all the defensive players all of a sudden all start running down the field and look like they were bowling.
Very true. Yeah, very true. Then if the 2026 Notre Dame team reaches their full potential, which of these recent national champions do they resemble in terms of play style? So buy one, sell one, hold one. 2025 Indiana, 24 Ohio State, 22 Georgia.
I'd probably say 25 Indiana. Like super high passer efficiency, big plays, pass game, run the ball still, play great defense. I think there'll be a better passing version of 25 Indiana. Not better, a more frequent passing version. I don't want to say better. They will pass more than what Indiana did, but similar style of play. Because I'm incorporating the whole regular season and postseason. And Ohio State was two different teams.
Yeah, I'd probably say 25 Indiana as well. 22 Georgia's close because I think their running back rotation could look very similar to that. Defense pans out, it could look similar to that, but I think all encompassing, I'd probably go 25 Indiana as well. From Ballpeen Shillelagh, Wisconsin actually gets stability at quarterback this season, resulting in a rather unexpected bounce back to a 7+ win season.
I got to hold that one, Trevor. We still don't have a long track record of G5 quarterbacks going to the Power 4 level and being successful. There's been some. Darian Mensah had a little bit of that this year with Duke, but doing that in the ACC is a whole lot different than doing that in the Big Ten. So the track record of those guys making that immediate transition and having a big turnaround and from a win-loss standpoint is not great. It's not great.
Yeah, I'm torn on this because I think Wisconsin is due for a bounce back, but not just because of their stability at quarterback. Like that's the biggest thing. Because like it would not be unexpected to me if they have a 7 or more win season. I've been tooting that horn for the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think all of their portal acquisitions combined with Luke Fickell kind of being in a now or never moment, combined with their significantly easier schedule than what it was the last 2 years. And that's not to say that their schedule is Charmin soft. It's just last year their schedule was ridiculous. I mean, they played the schedule that USC fans think that they play. That's what Wisconsin played last year. And that schedule was nasty. But I think they're going to be due for a turnaround, but not just because of the stability of quarterback, because I have the same concerns about Colton Joseph that what Brian just laid out. So I think for those, I'm going to sell it, but I do think they're going to be due for a bounce back.
It's not even that we're both pretty high on Colton Joseph as a player. It's just also being able to look honestly and objectively about how difficult this transition has been for a lot of quarterbacks. And then it's like, what's the town around him going to be? That's sort of my bigger concern. But honestly, the counter to that is the quarterback play in the last 2 years was so bad that if he's just average, that's a big improvement. Plus, the schedule's a lot easier than what it was compared to last year.
Yeah,
but no, I agree. I agree. It's just going to be tough.
Yeah. The one thing going for him is that his style of play dictates it to where he doesn't have to go and be like a pocket passing, rip you apart quarterback. That could help him kind of lead. He doesn't have to be like what Curtis Rourke was for Indiana in 2024. He went from the G5 to the P4. And then the moments where it counted, like on the road against Ohio State and then on the road against Notre Dame, struggled a little bit in some of those bigger moments. But I think Colton Joseph brings that facet with his legs, I think could really help.
Which is one of the few quarterbacks that has had some success making that transition is the Mark Gronowski kid at Iowa, who is a bit of a run-throw quarterback.
Yep.
Now, he didn't have the impact maybe statistically passing that I thought he would have, but he certainly had a big impact on them winning and losing games.
100%.
And he is like you're saying, he's exactly kind of what you're saying, Trevor. He doesn't need to go out there and go 22 of 31 and rip you up throwing. He could go 8 of 17 and crush you because he'll run for $120 and then make some big play. He'll go 8 of 17, but throw for 175 yards.
Right.
Because he hits some shots over your head and then he runs for 85 yards and and hurt you. And so that is one thing that we definitely agree on as far as the potential for him to overcome that. But I just can't ignore the fact that it's just been an issue.
Yep, 100%. Then Luke Fickell is canned with anything worse than 7 wins this season.
And we talked about that last week. I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, that is a buy for me as well. From Ballpeen Shillelagh, buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame's lacrosse loss to Princeton in their much better play in the second half should warn Notre Dame football that sometimes dialing back passion for structure sometimes backfires, and letting dudes be dudes can result in less mistakes and more plays.
I don't agree with that. I think sometimes we see this when a team's behind and they've got nothing to lose and they just kind of go let it all hang out. You also can't change the fact that in that moment, Princeton also adjusted what they were doing from what I could tell. And I don't understand lacrosse a ton, but they were playing differently than they were earlier. And Notre Dame was being more aggressive in a way that if they'd have done that earlier, maybe Princeton even blows them out even more because those mistake leads to it. But there's a reason why they couldn't come all the way back either. That's only going to take you so far. I just think, I don't know a lot about lacrosse, but I had a couple people explain this to me, and you could kind of see it watching it. They're like, this was a better team than Notre Dame. And that kind of looked like it. Now, again, I can't explain to you why. I'm not trying to pretend like, oh, I've learned so much about lacrosse. I'm just reading what this one guy on our board was a lacrosse guy. He's got Lax in his name, was explaining why, he wasn't bought into Notre Dame as a title contender until the postseason when they turned some things up. But he said this, he was talking about how, however Princeton plays defense could give Notre Dame a lot of problems from a scoring standpoint. And that's exactly what happened. Notre Dame really struggled to get shots on goal yesterday. So like what he said made a lot of sense to me. And you can kind of see without understanding the game, you're like, okay, yeah, this was a bad matchup for Notre Dame. And they've been this is number 1 versus number 2. So it's like, oh, when you, because I don't understand the sport a ton, you hear his explanation, then you watch how the game plays out and you're like, oh, wow. Okay. Now I get what he was talking about. And, so next year we'll see. They're still a pretty young team. I mean, Faison's a freshman, Matt Jeffrey's only a sophomore. They're still a pretty young team.
Yeah. Yeah, Notre Dame's men's lacrosse is going to be all right. Ballpeen, I understand the point that you're trying to make. It's just big picture, it's so tough to compare lacrosse to football because the structure that you need within those two sports are completely different. Football is, Notre Dame's defense has all the talent in the world. It still needs structure. You can't just put out all 11 very talented guys just like, all right, go get a stop. Like, you have to be good within the structure of your defense. But I understand the point that you're trying to make.
But like even in football, Trev, when a team falls way behind and then they just kind of let her all rip, and like, yeah, that's true. But this team clearly changed what they were doing. Like Ohio State defensively 2 years ago against Notre Dame in the championship game, they were not like the offense. Ohio State, like that they clearly pulled things back a little bit after they got that 31-7 lead. And the defense to a degree as well. And so then Notre Dame hit some big plays. And I think that if Notre Dame would have done that stuff earlier, maybe that had success, maybe. But teams are going to defend you differently later in the game when they're up by 4 scores, essentially. 4 or 5 scores. And so, yeah, you say, well, what if you did that? Well, early in the game, that might not have worked because they were playing different coverages and they were getting more pressure on the quarterback. And they were trying to do this where when they were up 4 scores with 10 minutes left, 7, 8 minutes left, whatever, they weren't coming at you the same way, either side of the ball. And that's why it may look, man, if they'd have done this earlier, maybe no, that's not how it would have played out.
From Slide Wilson, buy, sell, hold. To help resolve massive guaranteed contract issues, contracts at state schools at least should be correlated to the school's president's pay, maybe 3 times more as a max. To not fully cap earning potential, bonus structures will remain. Private schools, unfortunately, would have a significant advantage with this if no comparable limitation is found.
I'm going to sell this for 2 regards, and one of them he nails. I think it's very difficult to make this type of rule when you cannot force that upon a private school. You just can't. And you'd also have a hard time because I don't know how you can make this a state school because are all 50, well, I should say all 40, was it 48 states that play Division I football? No, 46 states that play Division I football, right? Because they don't have Division I football in Nebraska. They don't have Division I football Actually, it's 45. No Division I in Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Vermont, New Hampshire, correct? Maine. Maine also doesn't have division. So it's like 40 Delaware, because Delaware is D1 now. So I think it's like, what, 44 states, something like that. Point being, you're not going to have unified rules in 44 states. You're just not. But then even if you did somehow do that, the state of Indiana cannot mandate something like that to Notre Dame the way that they can to IU and Purdue. The state of Florida cannot mandate the same things to Miami that they can to Florida and Florida State and UCF and South Florida and teams like that. I'm also not a fan of capping salaries. With all due respect, from just a pure financial standpoint, I'm not saying a head football coach is more important to an institution than the president. I'm not saying that. I would argue quite the opposite when it comes to the actual purpose of a college. A president is far more important than a football coach to executing the academic mission. We agree on that? It's like not even close. But this is a business thing. And the reality is, it's the old joke. Well, if 50,000 people want to show up to watch, guys do a science experiment, then fine, you can do that. But that's the reality of it. Your value is based on what you generate. And in college sports, this is where I think a lot of people miss the boat in this player-driven thing. Is a lot of player, like, you look at it now, Trev, when Notre Dame players go to the NFL, there's a lot of fans that just don't have the same interest in those players as they did before. And because it's not about the players, it's about Notre Dame. And the head coach at big-time schools still, even today, is a lot more important than the players as a whole, because that's who's in charge of the vision and the stability in the long term. And over 20 years, how many quarterbacks are you going to have over a 10, 15, 20-year span? But the one head coach kind of thing. So, Mike Krzyzewski won multiple titles with different players throughout the different tenures, right? So a head football coach does generate way more revenue than does a president. So I don't think those two things should have anything to do with each other. A president should be what a school board and what whoever entities involved and how much money can be spent should impact that. Now, smart schools, here's the other thing too, is what you're going to find out is you're going to set a rule saying, well, the school can only pay you X amount of dollars. Okay, that's fine. I can only pay a head coach $1 million. Okay, cool. Then I'm just going to get private funding for the rest. Because remember, Mac Brown used to do this at Texas. He made a lot of money, but only $1 million of it came from the University of Texas. Everything else was from their TV, their shoe apparel company, and then donors and all these other kind of things. And that's fine if you want to say, hey, look, you want to cap the amount that the school can specifically spend. I think you'd probably find a little bit more of a sympathetic audience. Like, hey, you can pay a coach $10 million a year if you want, but the school can only give $2 million. All right, fine. The rest has to come from donors or the apparel deals or whatever the case may be. That's fine, whatever. But that would maybe we could have a conversation on that, Trev. But I don't think the coaches' salaries are the problem. No school is struggling because they pay their coach $10, $11, $12 million. Because the only schools doing that are the schools making crazy money because they've won. The issue is, however, when LSU has to pay Brian Kelly $70 million, or when Texas A&M has to pay Jimbo Fisher $60, $70 million, or when Florida State has to pay Mike Norvell $50 million as a buyout because they're losing. So that's the problem. Fix that first. This is exactly what we talked about earlier. You're trying to fix one problem by solving something else that I don't think is actually a problem. Coaches' salaries, to me, are not a problem when you consider how much revenue they're driving into the program. What was it? Notre Dame finished third this year in revenue. We saw from that one thing, and it was like Texas, and I think it was who's Texas and Ohio State. I think were the only two teams out of them, right? Is Notre Dame third if Brian Kelly's still a head football coach? I don't think they are. Like a good head football coach can be the difference in you making tens of millions of dollars, if not close to, $100 million. I just think it can be that important. So if having that coach at your school is worth you paying $10, $11, $12 million a year, so be it. He'll make up for that. The problem is when that coach is no longer worth that amount of money, you not got to pay him way more than that to leave. That's the issue. So I think changing how a coach's contract is structured, I'd be more sympathetic towards. Hey, you get rid of buyouts. Or if a coach has we said this last week, if the coach's record falls at any point in time in his tenure below whatever, 7-5, then you no longer owe him the buyout, or the buyout gets cut in half. And if a second season under that mark, then it's gone. Something like that. Because now, if you had contracts like that, Mike Norvell, you can fire for free. Because he's had multiple seasons underneath that standard. He's had 2 seasons now underneath 7-5, right? That's so you talked about why did you pay Mike Norvell $90 million over 10 years when he really only had one pretty good season and one great season. That's it. I don't disagree with that in general, Trev. I don't mind the $10 million, $90 million, 10 years for $90 million. I buy the fact that if you fire him, you have to pay him what's left of that contract. That's what I have an issue with. And you get rid of those guarantees if you get fired and say, hey, look, here's what's built in, Mike Norvell. You get this buyout unless you have 2 seasons where you fall below. Even if you did 500 for Mike Norvell, you're out the buyout. You know what I mean? Like, there still needs to be some you still have to hold to the standard that you were at when you got the contract. That's the bigger issue, Trevor, in my opinion, is that. So get rid of the buyouts, and people have a lot less problems with what coaches are being paid. Again, we're trying to fix an issue that's not an issue. That's not an issue, in my opinion. The issue is you have 95 staff members, and you have this, and you have doing this, and you're doing that, and you're doing that, and you've got these stupid 8-figure buyouts. That's the problem. Then you got to go pay a buyout of a coach you're trying to hire away. Those are much bigger problems, in my opinion, than anything else. Now, you can have to me, buyout should be if a coach wants to leave, he has to pay you to get out of the contract. That's more of where I would say let's push for that, as opposed to let's cap a coach's salary. You're very few instances will you find me sympathetic to capping salaries. Just like I've made the same argument for I don't want to cap an NIL opportunities of a player. What I've said is take the rev share and split that evenly amongst the players. But if an institution wants to give you $1 million, or if a car dealership thinks you're worth $1 million, who am I to say that if that ends up hurting their business, that's on them. God bless America. We should be putting caps on NIL numbers. We should be putting restrictions on how you can get NIL money, meaning there actually has to be some sort of exchange of, time for money. You have to actually engage in certain things, and there needs to be mandates on this, that, and the other thing. But if a business thinks a kid's worth $1 million because he thinks that quarterback can bring that type of revenue to the community because this kid's going to lead us to the playoffs, and I know what kind of money a playoff is going to make for me. Like if I'm a CEO of a hotel chain in South Bend, Indiana, I'm absolutely getting into the NIL business, because if you can get me playoff games for the next few years, home playoff games, I'm going to more than make up that money that I'm going to give him for that. You get what I'm saying, Trev? So it's you're just never going to find me as someone who's sympathetic to capping salaries. What I'm for is let's get rid of some of the other bloat. Don't cap a coach's salary, but why the heck are we paying a failed coach $50, $60, $70 million to leave because he didn't live up to the terms of his contract? You got paid like a coach that's going to compete for championships. You're no longer competing for championships. We're not paying you. Figure out how to make that work as opposed to capping coaches' salaries, because that doesn't change anything.
Yeah, this is a sell for me as well. Brian and I are very eye to eye on I don't think salaries should be capped. I just think that individual schools need to be smarter with how they structure their contracts.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a fan of guaranteed contracts with coaches, with players, because I've seen very, very few scenarios in sports where like guaranteed contracts, people walk away from being like, man, I'm really glad that we did that. Now that could change, but again, like there are so many different factors here. I think for players and coaches, I love incentive-based contracts. I do. You guys know I came from a sales background. So if I had 1 year in sales where I made $100,000, I'm not entitled to make that the following year just because I did it the year prior.
Right.
I then have to go back out and earn it again. Now, I think that incentive-based contracts, especially for coaches in sports, that's how you avoid the Mike Norvell situations where it's like, yeah, we have to pay him $70 million to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you avoid that. Like incentive-based contracts, I think would be so great for the sport, but not a lot of people want to go towards that. So,
Right.
but per this, I'm selling because there'd be no way to make it equal across all planes between public schools, private schools, the amount of states that have.
Right.
It would be impossible.
Correct, Trev. Forget public versus private. You can't do that from state to state. You can't. We see this with NIL stuff. There's different laws being passed in every single different state about what you can and can't do in NIL and what the NCAA can or can't do. There's no way. Oh, but we can just go to Congress. Okay, sure, buddy. Yeah, whatever you say, pal.
From I Am Tenzin, buy so hold. The weather will cooperate so you can do the whole show.
Well,
Bye.
So far so good, and we're getting close to the end. So far so good. Yeah, we'll buy that one.
Then buy so hold. Notre Dame is still underrated defensively, except for the secondary.
I'm going to sell that. I don't think that people are underrating the Notre Dame defense. I think there are certain individual players being underrated. But so far, Trev, there's only been one preseason magazine to come out. That's Athlon. And we're going to talk about this next week. Actually, I forget when we're going to talk about. We're going to break down how Athlon views Notre Dame in a show here soon. I've been a little out of commission the last few days. You'll forgive me. But I can't remember what the schedule is. But we have it on there. You and I went over it the other day. Athlon had Notre Dame as the number one secondary, number two linebackers, number two D-lines. Number two D-line in the country. They're not underrated. Unless you're like, I'm so adamant that the linebacking core is number one, that them being number two is underrated. Oh, okay, man, technically, sure. But the point is, they think they're an elite defense. Now, here's my pushback. Why is there only like one defensive player on the All-American list? Or was it two? It was like Leonard Moore's first team and like Kingston was third. Well, hold on a second. They've got the number one secondary, number two linebackers, number two D-line, but you don't have a single Notre Dame defensive lineman on first, second, or third team All-American. You only have one DB, first, second. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this disconnect here, which is dumb, and it makes sense. It is Athlon, and I loved writing for the magazine, but there was a lot of stuff outside of the Notre Dame stuff that I wrote that I'm like, this is kind of dumb. Which I didn't write the Notre Dame one this year because we're not with Athlon anymore. But you can't tell me that a team who's ranked 1, 2, and 2 in position groups nationally is underrated. And I see a lot of people talking about how good they think the defense is going to be this year. I think there are individual players that are underrated. Then I would be more sympathetic to this buy so hold. But if you're going to talk about the defense as a whole, I will sell that.
We see that very much the same.
I think it's the offense that's more underrated than the defense.
Agreed completely. Absolutely. And then buy so hold, Notre Dame will win all of their regular season games by multiple scores.
I was going to buy that just to be kind of funny because 6 points is technically 2 field goals, so that's multiple scores. But someone would be like, well, yeah, but if you get a touchdown, it's only one. Okay, whatever. But no, I don't see that. I mean, we've said this before, guys. 2019 LSU and 2001 Miami are the two greatest teams that we've seen since Nebraska 1994. And from, if I remember correctly, 1994 Nebraska is the only exception to this rule. You know, I believe it was 94 Nebraska. Their closest game was 10 points, I believe, 11, 17. Yeah, their closest game was 10 points. No, that was not. No, 95 Nebraska. It's also true of 94 Nebraska. 95 Nebraska did not have a single game within, 39's the closest. 40's the closest. 14. They had 2 games decided by 14 points. That's the closest game they had all year. And the year before was 10. Like since then, Miami
in the regular season, the last team to do it was 2013 Florida State in the regular season.
And then they played a much softer schedule than what Notre Dame will play this year.
Significantly. Yeah.
What was their closest game that year, Trev?
In the regular season, they beat Boston College on the road 48-34. Outside 14. Of that, they beat Clemson on the road 51-14. They beat a ranked Maryland team 63-0. They beat a Miami team.
And they blew out a good Clemson team that year. But overall, that was a soft schedule. Very soft schedule.
Yeah.
2019 LSU and 2001 Miami, we just got done talking about last week, are the two best teams of since 2000, and they both had single score games late in the year. I mean, I think wasn't the Auburn game in October for LSU? I believe
that they won 23-20.
Yeah, and then I think the last regular season game of the season for Miami in 2001 was a 2-point win over Virginia Tech. So even those teams had one-score games.
The other piece to this too, I agree with everything that you're saying, and I hate to be this guy. I also need to see Notre Dame win all of their regular season games under Marcus Freeman before I say they're going to win all of them by multiple scores. Like
we had this same conversation last year, Trev. We had
Yep.
the same exact type of question asked last year. Remember how many times we got to ask about how many times people say Notre Dame's going to beat Miami by insert like blowout, and we kept saying, guys, Miami's better than you think. That's not a place you just expect them to go. Could they? Sure, but I think we're kind of dealing with that again. Yes, Notre Dame is going to be very good, but in real life, that just when did you say the last time it happened? 13 years ago is the last time it happened.
That all their regular season games. Archer did say in the chat that Ohio State did it in 2019, won all their first 13
Won
games.
all their
by 10
regular
plus.
season games. Let's look at that real quick. Let's go Ohio State 2019. I don't disbelieve it, but because I keep thinking that's the year that they lost to Purdue, but that would have been 18, right? So they're 24, 11. Yeah, their closest game was an 11-point win over Penn State in 2019. That was a pretty soft schedule, in my opinion, as well, but Penn State was pretty good that year, Trev. Michigan in 19 was okay. But it's just not something that you're going to see very often.
Right.
You're just not. And I think to Trev's point, Notre Dame has to prove that they can win all their games. By the way, Ohio State scored last in that game to make an 11-point game. So they scored, it was early, but how many undefeated seasons has Marcus Freeman had? 0. Like, let's let them just do that first. And then I don't care how many points that the wins are by, right? Like, does anybody look back and say, boy, that 2012 season wasn't that good or wasn't that much fun because they had X number of single-digit wins? Or do we just enjoyed watching them win all their flipping games? I don't care that they only won them. The only close game that I found annoying was Purdue because they just weren't good. Like the Michigan game wasn't exciting from a score standpoint, but it was an exciting game. I mean, two great defenses and smacking each other. The BYU game was a little bit frustrating, but it was more, you didn't have your starting quarterback. You were, but man, just go out there and win all their games. And then, in a few years, we can kind of look and say, oh, well, now we can expect them to do that. But I just want to see them win all their games, Trevor. It's a phenomenal point.
Yeah. If they go undefeated, but beat Miami by 3, SMU by 7, and BYU by
6,
7, I'm not going to be mad.
Well, they only won those games by single digits. Yeah.
I will say, though, having said all of that, if Notre Dame wins all their regular season games by double digits, Notre Dame will not have played in a single possession game since their Texas A&M loss in 25. That would also be nuts.
Yeah.
That would be a crazy run. But
that's exactly why people are saying this. But it's almost, well, all 10 of their wins last year by double. Yeah, but they lost 2 games. And had they made enough plays to win those 2 games, those both would have been single-digit games.
100%. Another one from I Am Tenzin. Buy one, sell one, hold one of these players to play opposite of Leonard Moore. Benjamin Morrison, Cam Hart, Julian Love.
So I gotta answer this one a little bit differently. So first of all, I'm selling Julian Love in both instances because in today's game, I want Julian Love at nickel.
Yeah.
Like I want him at nickel. So it's between Benjamin and Cam Hart on both answers. If we're talking about an Al Golden man-based defense, it's Benjamin Morrison. If we're talking about Chris Ash's defense, which is more zone-oriented, it is definitely Cam Hart. Because I think Benjamin and Cam were a great duo. Benjamin was even better than Cam in that defense. I think Cam might – now we're talking fifth-year version of Cam versus sophomore version of Benjamin, right? Like, let's not forget that. So this isn't like, oh, Benjamin wasn't as good as Cam. In 2023, in that defense – Benjamin was elite. in this defense, Benjamin is still very good, but I think it tailors to Cam's skill set even more than Benjamin's, whereas the Al Golden defense tailored a little bit more to Benjamin's skill set than Cam's. So that's why I would say, Trev, I think in this defense, it's Cam. I'd buy Cam Hart. I'd hold Benjamin Morrison. If you're a coordinator that's more man-oriented, it's Benjamin Morrison versus Cam Hart. Here's the other element is, would Benjamin Morrison be as good to the field as he was to the boundary? That's the other element that leans towards Cam as well in a zone-based defense. In a man-based defense, a little different story if you're going to play pure man to the field. But that's why I would say I have two different answers. So in the current defense, I would buy Cam Hart. I would hold Benjamin Morrison, while also admitting that this is a win-win at corner.
I'm with you. I don't really think between Ben Morrison or Cam Hart there's a bad option. But I'll say this. My order is I'm buying Cam Hart, holding Ben Morrison, and I'm selling Julian Love. Whereas Julian Love would be an interesting fit with this zone defense with Chris Ash, because I think Julian Love excels at zone, definitely over man. But here's the difference for me. I'm Mr. I got to see it. And I need much more projection to talk about what Ben Morrison would do to the field than what type of elite season Cam Hart would have to the field, because I watched him do that in 2020.
That's right.
I watched him have an elite season at field corner, whereas Ben Morrison, you kind of have to project a little bit more. Now, having said that, I'm confident in saying that Benjamin Morrison would be just fine at
because
the field
we're picking between two studs.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with the Kyle Hamilton versus Xavier Watts thing. So we're being a little negative on Kyle. Yeah, because you have to nitpick when you're talking about two great players. You have to nitpick one of them to figure out which of the great players you want to go with.
100%.
That's what it comes down to.
Yep. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to see DJ McKinney this year, opposite of Leonard Moore, is because I think he's going to remind me a lot of what Cam Hart looked like to the field in 2023. So for those reasons, I'm buying Cam, but it's very close.
Yep. Last one, Trevor, from our guy, John A1.
The recent highlights of major programs' financial struggles will lead to NIL restrictions, rev share deals, so schools can keep their heads above water.
That's the challenge, man. Here's the problem is they do need to have some sort of rev share deal, because, like, look, you've got to have some changes, because right now schools are basically fitting the bill for all of this stuff. Whereas if you go to the way this should be, hey, look, this is the amount you can spend on sports, and then that's it. The school's on the hook only for that. And then everything else has to be external, legitimate name, image, likeness deals. Cool. That's the only way they're going to be able to do this. But here's another thought. Again, I understand all this, but here's the deal. Be smarter with how you're spending money. Do you need administrative staff on colleges as big as they are at all these colleges? Some of them, I know that there's changes that they can make to get rid of some of the bloat. Same thing with coaching staffs. Hey, we know how much you love having this, and this, but you want to cut costs, limit how big the staffs can be. I mean, think about how many people these schools are hiring to run the recruiting operation, and their analysts and GAs. And it's like, there's like 30 people just involved with the football part of it. You know, like, limit some of that stuff. You know, like that. Those are things that I think you have a better opportunity of getting done than salary caps. But here's, just stop spending so much money irresponsibly. Like, I'm so tired of this. You know, like, look, I can't stand credit cards, man. And I have a lot of issues with the predatory nature of credit cards. But at the end of the day, those are choices. Like, Chase isn't going up to people's houses and like, freaking spend money right now. No. It's like, people make choices. Now, I would say that there's a lot of people that have no business getting a credit card. But if you understand, and maybe we can make some laws saying, hey, let's get rid of the predatory nature of some of these lenders. I'm all for that. But at the end of the day, these are things that people are choosing to do. People are choosing to not manage their money well. They're choosing to run up debt on things they can't otherwise afford. My wife and I've had this conversation a million times. Babe, if we got to get something on a credit card because we can't afford it, then we shouldn't be buying it. Now, we bought a garage. We had to get a new garage recently. Our garage door broke. And they gave us this card that we could use for a year. And, you pay it down over time. And so we chose to go that route. But we had the money, and we chose to put it into an account that collects interest every month. So then when that 12 months is up, we've made a couple bucks off of paying for this. But we only did that because we had the money that the garage was going to cost, and we put it into this account. So it's like, if we don't have the money to do something, then we shouldn't be out there doing it, unless it's an emergency situation, which fortunately we haven't really got into yet, like in a medical circumstance, you know what I mean? Something like that. That's what these schools need to do. We deal this crap with schools, with government. It's like, oh, we're not making enough tax revenue. The problem isn't the tax revenue you're bringing in. The problem is you're spending beyond what you don't have a balanced budget. Get back to having a balanced budget, and these schools won't be having the same problems they have. Well, how can we do that? You don't need a 2-to-1 player to coach ratio with some of these stats. It's insane. You know what I mean? It's like you literally have in certain degrees almost a legitimately 3 to 4 to 1 coach to player ratio. That is overkill for how big some of these staffs are. When you look at analysts and all this other kind of stuff, fix some of that stuff. And then we can address these other issues. But as I said, if you start bringing in more money, all they're going to do is start spending that money on other things. They're not going to actually say, okay, now we're okay. We can pay our bills and live within our means now. They're just going to revert that back to some other thing. Hey, we don't have to give as much as players. So now we're going to put that in an account to save. No, they're going to then say, okay, let's go hire 5 more analysts or do this. Now we're going to rent this private health. You can't cry broke and then your head coach is taking a private helicopter to go meet a recruit. You're going to miss me, George. Oh, we don't have the money. Well, hey, how much did you spend on that private helicopter that you took to go watch that player, at practice? Maybe don't do that. Maybe, you don't rent the 10 Lamborghinis for the kids to look through and walk through at practice one day. Maybe those things aren't the smartest things to do when these kids are on campus. I'm just saying, there's a lot of ways we can make a lot more sense and save a lot of money without capping this or restricting that. Or how about you guys just live within a budget? That's a crazy idea, but how about that? Come on, man. Let's fix that stuff. Then we can address all these other things.
For sure. Yep, without a doubt. I do think we have a super chat before we get out of here as well.
Yes, we do, from Raymond Harton.
Appreciate you, Raymond. Hey, IB Nation, if you haven't joined IB or checked out the performance T-shirts, if you are members, do it. It's summertime, worth every penny.
Yeah, Ray just got one. It's these ones, Trev. I'm wearing them today. They are kind of like dry fit. Trev wears them to work out and also for shows. They are awesome, man. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
They're awesome shirts, man. Awesome shirts. How many have I got you so far, Trev? We're almost to June. I'll get you some more when we get to June.
I think I have like 4 or 5 right now.
They're great shirts. I have like 4 or 5 of each color. They're beautiful.
No, they're
wonderful.
Great shirts. Yeah. Great shirts.
Appreciate that,
folks.
Raymond.
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate you, Ray. Folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now,
we may or may not have another show tonight. We'll see. We'll let you guys know. That's why you got to make sure that you've hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and make sure your notifications are on. So if for some reason, just randomly throwing it out there, Trev, we did a show at 6:30 tonight. People would be able to see that and tune in and watch. Just like hypothetically speaking.
Speaking it out there, we will have one show for sure at 5:05 p.m. The guys are going live on IB Nation Sports Beat, so not going to want to miss that show either. Goes live at 5:05. Like Brian said, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell on your way out of this show. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. So until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.